Koppel.
Here.
Commissioner Moore.
Here.
And Commissioner Richards. Commissioners, first on your agenda is consideration of items proposed for continuance. Item 1, case number 2017-001283 CUA at 792 Cap Street. A conditional use authorization is proposed for continuance to June 28, 2018. Item 2, case number 2014.1459 CUA at 214 State Street. A conditional use authorization is proposed for continuance to July 12, 2018. Item 3, case number 2017-003299 DRP-03 at 1782 Quesada Avenue. A discretionary review is proposed for continuance to July 26, 2018. Commissioners, further under your discretionary review calendar, item 15 for case number 2009.0880 DRP at 2100 Mission Street, a discretionary review. We've just received a request from the DR requester in agreement with the sponsor to continue that matter to July 12, 2018. We have received a request from the sponsor representative for item 11 at 412 Broadway Street, but staff is not in support of that request for continuance. So we should probably take up that matter when the item is called in the hearing.
Okay, or we could take it up now.
It's up to you.
I mean, if the project sponsor's asking for a continuance, I think we
The
let's
staff's
take it up.
recommendation is disapproval on this. So
412 Broadway.
You want to take up Broadway now?
I mean, let's take the matter of continuance now.
Okay. Item 11,
Not
case number
continue, we're here.
2017-015181 CUA at 412 Broadway Street, or excuse me, just Broadway. Conditional use authorization. We did receive a request from the project sponsor to continue this matter. I advised him that we are now looking at the August 30th date,
Okay.
and staff is not in support of the continuance.
All right, any public comment on the items being proposed for continuance? Paul.
Good afternoon, President Hillis, Commissioners. Jeremy Paul on behalf of Joe Karuba and BSC Management. The project sponsor, the business owner, had to be out of the country. His father passed recently and had to be there overseas and was expected to be back for this hearing, and unfortunately has not been able to make it back in time, and we would ask for a continuance so that he may be here to present to the board.
Okay, thank you. Any additional public comments on the items being proposed for continuance?
Thank you, Commissioners. And very briefly, John Kevlin here with Ruben Junius and Rose on behalf of the project sponsor for 2100 Mission. Happy to report that we've agreed to terms in a settlement with MEDA. And so we just need a little time to write that up in written form. And so we're asking for a continuance to July 12th if possible. It really doesn't matter. We expect to have this wrapped up quickly. And it's a DR, so it'll be withdrawn and it shouldn't be back in front of you again. So thank you for your consideration.
All right, thank you. Any additional public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and open it up to commissioners. Commissioner Moore.
Continue items 1 through 3 as proposed. Move to continue item 15 for July 12th and open 11 up for further comments from the commissioners.
Can we just, is staff here who's recommending not continuing that, just so we can hear why?
Adam's in the back.
I believe they were prepared to speak to the matter of continuance when the item was called. Oh, he is. Oh, very good.
Commissioners,
Mr.
yes. The department is recommending disapproval of this item. We do not see the need for continuance. The project sponsor, Mr. Paul, has been staff's almost exclusive point of contact throughout this application process. And we do not see how the continuance would affect our recommendation of disapproval in this case.
Okay. I mean, if the project sponsor's asking to continue, I mean, maybe they come back and they don't bring a project back or change. I just can't see why it would hurt to continue this item. So I'm okay continuing that till the August date. I get it, staff may not change their mind, but I just don't see the harm in actually allowing the project sponsor to work with staff and continue that. Commissioner Fong.
I have to agree. So I agree with the motion to continue the items that Commissioner Moore made in addition to adding number 11 to be continued.
Is that a second?
Second, Commissioner Moore.
I cannot participate. I personally do have to rely on staff, including the sequence of contacts they had, and we can only do so much work. My house gets fuller and fuller of continued things, and this is one, the clear presentation by staff, not just what's in the document itself. I support staff's recommendation of not to continue this item.
So yet that's not part of your motion.
No, it's not part of mine, but somebody can make an alternate
Very good.
motion if there's enough support for this continuance, not for me.
So there was an alternate motion and a second, but there's a motion and a second. That doesn't include, well,
I didn't
your
hear
end.
an- I didn't hear an alternate motion. I just heard the original.
Oh, well, Rodney, Commissioner Fong,
Oh, that was a motion,
That
that
was-
was just support. Okay.
That was an alternate motion to the items that Commissioner Moore had mentioned and adding item number 11 to the continuance.
I don't quite think it works that way, because the motion, just to continue what needs to be continued, is one item, which I agree with,
well,
and
so
then you
let's
can
do
make a
this.
separate
Let's do
motion.
this, Commissioner Moore. We'll do two motions. You made a
Correct. Yes,
motion.
please.
There was a second. We'll take that item up.
Right.
If Commissioner Fong's motion is just item 11, we could take that up separately.
Thank you.
Commissioner, okay, so that's,
All right, Commissioners, there is a motion that has been seconded to continue items 1 through 3 and 15 as proposed. On that motion, Commissioner Fong?
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Koppel?
Aye.
Commissioner Moore?
Aye.
Commissioner Richards?
Aye.
Commissioner Melgar?
Aye.
And Commission President Hillis?
aye.
So moved, Commissioners. That motion passes unanimously, and there is a second motion that has been seconded, correct? To continue item 11 to August 30th. On that motion, Commissioner Fong?
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Koppel?
No.
Commissioner Moore?
No.
Commissioner Richards?
Aye.
Commissioner Melgar?
No.
And Commission President Hillis?
Aye.
So moved, Commissioners. That motion passes 4-3 with Commissioners Koppel, Moore, and Melgar voting against. Commissioners, that'll place us under Commission matters for item 4, Commission comments and questions.
Seeing none, Jonas?
Very good. Department matters, item 5, Director's announcements.
No new announcements this week, Commissioners. Thank
Excellent.
you.
Item 6, review of past events of the Board of Supervisors, Board of Appeals. There was no Historic Preservation Commission hearing yesterday.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Aaron Starr, Manager of Legislative Affairs. On Monday, the Land Use Committee considered the Mayor's Process Improvements Ordinance. Commissioners, you heard this item last week at your June 7th hearing. At the hearing, you voted to recommend the ordinance with modifications. The committee adopted several of the Commission's recommendations, including amendment to require that all notification materials be provided according to adopted Planning Commission policy. However, the committee voted to maintain the proposed 20-day standard notification period and did not include amendments regarding design review, performance standards, prevailing wage, and building code standards for 100% affordable housing projects. The committee also maintained the exception of limited rear yard additions, also known as pop-outs, from neighborhood notification requirements. However, the committee amended the ordinance to require notification for these pop-outs if the existing structure has been modified in the previous 3 years. The committee also urged the Planning Commission to adopt a policy to require pre-application meetings for these rear yard additions. In the end, the committee voted without objection to refer the amended ordinance to the full board at the June 19th regular meeting. In addition, Supervisor Kim moved to duplicate the file in order to introduce further amendments to Articles 10 and 11. These amendments would allow administrative approval of certain minor scopes of work on historic structures, specifically the administrative approval of signs, murals, or exterior paint installed to celebrate an event or anniversary of an event of a national or international significance relevant to the historic context of the landmark or historic district. The duplicated ordinance was scheduled to be heard at the committee on July 9th hearing, and the duplicated version will be forwarded to the HBC and this commission for their review and action. At the full board this week, Supervisor Peskin ordinance that would increase the TSF passed its second read, and reauthorizing of Section 210.3C concerning new production PDR spaces passed its first read. And so far, I don't have any new introductions.
Thank you.
Commissioners, the Board of Appeals did meet last night and considered the early day statue as part of the Pioneer Monument in the Civic Center Historic District. The Arts Commission and the Historic Preservation Commission submitted a rehearing request, and the Board of Appeals unanimously voted to grant the rehearing request. So stay tuned. Commissioners, if there are no questions, we can move on to general public comment. At this time, members of the public may address the Commission on items of interest to the public that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Commission, except agenda items. With respect to agenda items, your opportunity to address the Commission will be afforded when the item is reached in the meeting. Each member of the public may address the Commission for up to 3 minutes. I did have just one speaker card for Georgia Shudish.
All right, Ms. Shudish.
Good afternoon. I was at the Land Use Committee hearing, and I want to talk about that. And in fact, here's a copy of what I just submitted to the supervisors for your file, if you want to add it to the supporting documents for next week. I'm here to ask you to please write to the board, either as a commission or as individual commissioners, and tell the Land Use Committee, or tell the supervisors why the Land Use Committee was incorrect when they declined to enact the recommendations that you made last week for the process improvement. It should be 30 days for all noticing, not 20. Should be 30. And the OTC pop-outs, OTC for the pop-outs, I think that's really questionable. I want to show you 2 envelopes, if I may have the overhead, please, in terms of noticing. I think that's the best envelope.
Could you pull the mic around?
That's the best notice to send out notices in, because, as I said, I think it gets people's attention. I still think you need to send the 311s to the immediate neighbors at the very least, and concerned parties and interested parties. Here is an envelope that I just got the other day for a pre-app meeting for something that's very important in Noe Valley. It's the Real Food site. There's no return address. My address, which I should have crossed out, is very faint, and it was arrived 2 days after. I don't want to get something, but anyway.
It's on TV.
It's on TV, I know.
You might want to pull that off.
Oh, well. Yeah, they could look me up on the internet
That's
and know
right.
where I am.
We've
You
all
know. Anyway,
done that.
this notice, I almost didn't open this because I had a bunch of mail. That one, without the return address. And in fact, the notice inside was the wrong date was on the official notice, and the letter had a different date. It was very confusing. So what's my point? Pre-application, if they're going to do just pre-application for OTC, it's got to be a lot better than it is now, because stuff like that's what goes on. It needs to be formalized. It needs to be expanded so it's not the dead-end process. And I do think that 311 notices with the plans, 11 by 17, should be mailed. I made a copy, but I forgot to bring it up because I'm fish stunking today. But I printed out an 8.5 by 11 of something that I got, 11 by 17. It's totally, you can't read the 8.5 by 11. And people like me and neighbors cannot print out 11 by 17. It's impossible. And if it's going to be 20 days, they certainly shouldn't have to run around to the planning department and bother Lulu and Melissa to get plans. You're going to put a lot of work on your staff people. You think you're reducing staff work? You may be putting work on the people that deserve the least amount of work. So I really hope that you will write a letter to the supervisors and tell them maybe they should just consider this neighborhood notification thing separately from the rest of the bill. Thank you very much.
All right. Hernandez.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Gus Hernandez, co-chair of Affordable Diviz. Thank you for your time today. I'm here because there's a proposal for an annualized state density bonus project in the Divisadero Neighborhood Commercial Transit District, but I was not able to get my questions answered by the planner assigned to this project, so I'm here before you today. Can I have the overhead, please? The project sponsor for 1355 Fulton Street is proposing a 9-story, 85-foot project that is 20 feet over the existing height limit. And they're hosting the pre-application meeting tonight. But let me take a step back and just give you a sense of the timeline here. Our community learned about this project not from any posted notifications or mailings, but from a Business Times article on May 3rd. I emailed the planner, Christopher May, and I noted that the application form submitted by the project sponsor was missing information. So I have that here. So here's the application that I found online for 1355 Fulton. It's in the NCT. So you see, it says, is the project seeking approval under Analyzed State Density Bonus Program? Yes. If yes, please provide the following information. Completed calculation of the base and density bonus, as well as the base and bonus envelope pursuant to Planning Code Section 206.5C5. The percentage of affordable units provided in the base project and their associated affordability levels in AMI. Obviously, as Affordable Diviz, we're very interested in these numbers. It was missing that information. So I asked Chris if the calculation of the affordable percentage was provided, and he confirmed it was not. I'm not surprised that the density calculation was not provided because per Planning Code Section 206.5 gives us instructions on how to qualify for a height bonus under Analyzed State Density Bonus Program. Step 1, calculate base density and bonus density limits. Step 1, right? Base density is the lot area divided by the maximum lot area per unit permitted. Okay, so as you know, the NCT in 2015 lost the density regulations. So that would be divided by 0, and you can't divide by 0. So therefore, I lost my notes, but so I'm here before you because I don't understand how a project can go forward with their pre-application meeting tonight when they didn't provide all the information to the planning department. How are we supposed to know the number? I mean, I don't want to go tonight and waste my time and hear, oh, we don't know how many affordable units there are.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Your time is up.
I thought that was the first bell. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hester?
Someone dropped a pen. Sue Hester, basically, and I have thing to hand in for the minutes. The Planning Commission acted a week ago on the process improvements legislation, and the following day, which was Friday, the staff sent the completed motion to the Board of Supervisors, and the Board of Supervisors Land Use Committee had their only hearing Monday and completed the review, disagreed with your suggestions in some cases, altered them in others, disregarded a couple others, and sent it to the full board for adoption on the 19th. The total hearings on the legislation were last Thursday and 3 days ago on Monday. The legislation had been introduced May 1st. It will be signed by the mayor under their current plan on the 27th of June. This is a radical schedule for substantial change in the planning code. I had intended to give you what was sent to the Board of Supervisors, but I have to go pick it up and then bring it up and give it to you. The legislation was also changed in committee, and it's not going to have another hearing at the Board of Supervisors or at this commission. Basically, you've had two speakers talking about how notice is done under current procedures, how applications are filled out, how pre-application meetings happen. I had no idea that they were going to bring these up. But you have had illustrations of how the process really is important. And there's no input from the public, no workshops. The entirety of the workshops were AIA and developers conducted by your department. I have never seen the planning process go like this in the entire time I've been dealing with the Planning Commission, which I don't want to say, don't want to go back that far. There have been times when the Planning Commission really attempted to find out how to improve things, and it usually consulted the public. It's not done anymore. And so this has been the death knell for public input. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hester. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Todd David on behalf of the San Francisco Housing Action Coalition. Apparently, I don't need to give public comments. Sue just gave it for me, so hurrah, hurrah. I don't know what I'm hurrahing, but okay, hurrah, hurrah. I just wanted to give a little, on behalf of the San Francisco Housing Action Coalition, congratulations to Mayor-elect Breed and Supervisor-elect Mandelman. I think that both of them are really going to be outstanding for part of the pro-housing world. I've been particularly impressed with Supervisor Breed on the campaign trail, really talking about the missing middle income housing that we at HAC have really tried to been focused on. And I find her personal story incredibly compelling about friends who no longer can afford to live in the city because they've gotten middle income jobs and they're just priced out. And I'm also glad that Ms. Schutis brought up the Real Foods building. Supervisor-elect Mandelman and I spoke the other day, and we're going to try to go meet with the owner and see if there's a possibility that we can get some middle-income housing on top of the Real Foods building on 24th Street. So, I think that the elections served San Francisco really well, and looking forward to continuing to work with the new mayor and the new board of supervisors to keep getting more housing at all levels of affordability built in San Francisco. Thanks.
Thank you. Any additional general public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Director Ram, just a question. Can you shed any light on the project on Fulton Street? I know it's a pre-application, so
it is a pre-application meeting. What happened? I don't know what our typical process is in terming the base density bonus. The challenge, it actually is a little bit complicated because there's no more density limits. And so we have to basically make some assumptions about, based on height and bulk, how many units one could get in the base. We did that with Patrick Kennedy's project on 11th Street.
And we did it on Mission Street, too.
And we did it on Mission Street as well. So it's a bit of a calculation, and it's a little bit of a back and forth with staff to kind of agree on what the number of units would be in the base.
Right.
So I suspect that's probably why we don't have it yet, but I understand the concern that we don't know the actual numbers at this point in time. We can make sure that the project sponsor, when we do get that calculation, then goes back to the community with that number. We can try to make sure that happens.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Richards?
So, I hear the concern Ms. Schutis brought up, and I think it would probably be a good idea to examine or look at some type of a standardized notification that the project sponsor has to send, maybe with a thing on the front that says, this is about a project, open me, with a sticker or something. We could do some improvements like that to actually make sure that people pay attention to these anonymous looking pieces of mail.
Yeah, and I think, as you recall from your hearing, you directed us to work with the community and come back to you with your policies that would set up these standards, and that can certainly be one of them.
Right.
Thank you.
And the board may alter what we did, so the policies may change because of that. So we will have a hearing with Schutis ultimately on the kind of what those notices look like. But there's no reason we shouldn't go into the pre-app notices also on that. Commissioner Fong.
Just to throw out, I know the conversation is about mailings and notices, but if it were partially electronic, you'd be able to track who opened it and who didn't, and when they opened it and when they didn't. Just throwing that out there.
Nice idea.
All right, Jonas.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nothing further, Commissioners. We can move on to your regular calendar for item 7, case number 2018-004601 CWP for the San Francisco State Campus Master Plan informational presentation.
You're going to start? You want me to? Okay. Commissioners, we're pleased to welcome San Francisco State here to give you an informational update on their master plan. And if I may, I'd like to introduce the president of the university who's with us today, Dr. Leslie Wong. Dr. Wong is president, of course, of SF State, which is now consists of more than 3,500 faculty and staff and a student population of over 30,000 students, which is, frankly, much bigger than I would have thought. Dr. Wong also serves on a number of boards, including on the board of directors of the American Association of Colleges and Universities, the SF Chamber, the Bay Area Council, and the NCAA Committee to Promote Cultural Diversity and Equity. I'm happy to report that Dr. Wong for many years was in my home state of Michigan and was president of Northern Michigan University before coming here in 2012. Doctor, thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me. Commissioners, it's an honor to be here with you to share with you our vision and plans for the future of the campus. We are currently in the planning phases of a campus-wide physical master plan to guide our development over the next 18 years. And this will allow us to support our academic mission for a fairly large community, 30,000 students, et cetera, as you heard. And this project will serve to support our academic mission as well as revitalize the campus and to support student success. Much like the city, our projects will involve a significant amount of new housing on campus for faculty, staff, and students. I also want to share with you my compliments to the Planning Commission staff. They have been invaluable in helping us develop our plans, and I'm proud to say that we have a great relationship with the Planning Commission. We've also worked with other city agencies as well. We've held a number of public forums with neighbors, with some of the neighborhood commissions. We've also done significant work in improving the transit capabilities of our students and employees to get to the main campus. For example, we recently passed and instituted what we call the Gator Pass, and it enables our students to ride on BART for a 25% discount and ride on Muni at no extra cost. And that is a fee-based service. Right now, about 70% of our students and employees are on public transit coming into campus. So I'm going to turn the desk over to Vice President Jason Porth. He'll take you through a PowerPoint to give you an idea of the campus. As you know, we are landlocked, and the ability to not only update academic buildings, but also better utilize our space to accommodate such a large community. I think you'll be pleased, and I think we look forward to your feedback on the project as well. So, Mr. Porth.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Wong and members of the Commission. We're really delighted to be with you all today. And what I'd like to focus on is, we talk about master plans as buildings, but in this case, with an education institution, what it's really about for us is not the buildings, but what the buildings allow us to achieve. We are a mission-focused organization, and what we're about is educating the people of San Francisco and the surrounding area and providing opportunity. We are deeply proud of our home. We're deeply proud to be centered in San Francisco and to serve the people of San Francisco and the region. And we believe at our core that we're preparing not just the city's workforce, but the city's next generation of civically minded community members. And what we're going to present to you today is really what we think will allow us to achieve those ends. We believe that what we do on campus is reflective of the city's core values and aspirations that we believe are widely held, which are a commitment to equity, inclusion, and providing opportunity. And if I could give you one example of that, one illustrative example, I'd ask you all to join us at AT&T Park. And that wouldn't be for a Giants game, I'm sorry. It would be for our commencement, which we hold every year for the last 4 years at the park. That's because we've grown so much that we can't house our commencement anymore on campus. And if I could bring you to this, the point of the ceremony where President Wong turns to the graduates and says to them, I'd like you all to raise your hand if you are a first person in your family to get a college degree. And you wouldn't believe the number of hands that go up, and you wouldn't believe the cheers from the audience. And to me, that poignant story is who we are, and that's the impact that we make. And more importantly, for your business today, that's why we're here today. We want to do more of that. And if I show you what we look like as a campus, this is probably quite familiar to you. If you've taken the M line, you've been near our campus, and if you've driven south or north on 19th Avenue, you've been near our campus as well. And too many times people look at our campus and we have to come to the realization that's quite troubling. And what we often tell our students is you're going to get an extraordinary education here despite the facilities. And that's painful because we know that our students are working in labs that are no better than high school labs, if as good as high school labs. Our gymnasium looks like one that is probably one you'd find in a middle school, maybe a high school. And we desperately want to make our students have the opportunities that they deserve in the facilities that they deserve. So just to orient you to our campus, the picture you see in front of you on the screens is if you were looking west, you see 19th Avenue in the front with the ocean in the background. And we have some very big neighbors. Park Merced to our south and Stonestown to our north. You can see Lowell off to the side on the north as well. And of course, Lake Merced and the public golf course there also. So what's the plan about? In large part, it's about allowing us to offer classes, of course, and in better facilities, like I've mentioned. We're all about teaching, learning, scholarship, research. That's the core of what we do. We want to have new buildings for classes, research, support space, and what we are anticipating as part of this plan is increasing from about 1.5 million square feet to 1.9 million square feet, so about a 400,000 square foot increase in the amount of academic space. And that is the net gain. So if we take away the old buildings and replace them as well, that's what we're looking at. As you can imagine, on a campus as old as ours, we have a great deal of deferred maintenance to address. One way we'll address that is actually by removing the buildings and getting away from the deferred maintenance and instead replacing buildings with new ones. And as President Wong alluded to, our plan is also heavily focused on adding additional housing to the campus. Right now, when I checked in with colleagues in housing, we have 3,000 students, or I should say prospective students that would like to enroll at SF State next year, who've been admitted, but who we cannot house. It's a huge number, especially when you think that we only house 3,500 students. So we have a significant demand for additional housing on campus. And our plan is to increase from about 3,500 beds of student housing to about 12,500 beds of housing. We've become a much more residential campus, but we don't have the residential to be able to offer, so our students look on the open housing market. So by building housing on campus, we're going to help alleviate some of the demand that the city's facing as well by having our students live on or near campus, which will also offset the transportation impacts that we have as we continue to grow and offer more opportunities for people who want to come to SF State. People think that we're just offering housing to make money. That's not the case. We offer housing because it leads to student success. Students that live on campus are far more likely to succeed and graduate on time. And what happens right now is we offer first-year housing to a student, and then they come back the second year and we can't house them, so they discontinue their education, or they move back to Southern California, where a lot of our students come from, and move back in home with their families and finish up in Southern California. Increased graduation rates are what this plan is about, and that's a large part of what the housing is about as well. We also recognize that as a public urban university, we have a role to play in convening the city and the surrounding community. We envision some very significant public uses on the plan, an event center for concerts, performances, lectures. Anyone on the west side will be delighted to see that we have plans for a hotel and conference center. I recently had a chance to meet with the Ingleside Terraces Homeowners Association, as well as the Lakeside Properties Owners Association. And I have to tell you that when I met with them, I was frankly a little nervous to mention the hotel, and everyone lit up. There's a desperate need for a hotel on the west side, and we plan on offering one that we see an educational component here as well. We have a wonderful hospitality and tourism program, and that department would be integral in helping us operate that hotel. You also see parking highlighted there. The good news is it's no net increase in parking. By increasing the housing on campus, we expect that people will walk to work or to school. You also see some other significant uses as well, like an innovation and leadership center, new science building, some great public uses. And of course, a commitment to sustainability and open. For those who are familiar with the topography of our part of town, there's what was a valley that's frankly been not given the attention it needs. We have a parking structure in it right now, and over time, we'd like to return that valley to its natural place in the ecosystem and get that parking out of the middle of the valley, so that it can be enjoyed by our students in the community with recreation fields, a bridge connecting the former Stonestown Apartments, which we now own, to the campus community, a new science quad as well to really highlight things that we're offering. And then lastly, like the handout that you have in front of you, on the left side you see what the vision is for 2035. This is a long-term plan. And while I'll share with you some near-term things that you'll be seeing in the next couple of years that will be completed, on the right side you'll see what the plan looks like once fully enacted, with the future uses for both academic enrollment and other needs. This plan is the result of well over a year of study, refinement, iteration, outreach, working with city agencies, and looking to start assessing what the environmental impacts of this plan would be. And we've been helped in this along this path, as President Wong mentioned, with a wonderful working relationship with city agencies, including the planning department. We work closely with MTA on our transportation impacts as well. And all of that came out of a 2007 Memorandum of Understanding signed by the city as well as SF State. And it's led and really helped us have a wonderful working relationship over the last 10 years. And as we begin the process now of doing an updated master plan, we're looking to revisit the MOU and make sure that it reflects the aspirations of both entities and working together to make sure that we can be successful in implementing this plan. And then as far as timeline goes, in the early fall, we'll be issuing a notice of preparation as part of the CEQA process, and we'll, of course, continue to work with city agencies. We'll continue our outreach to campus neighbors and have another round of open houses. We'll be sending a letter, and we got some good advice today about how to send some letters. We're going to send a letter to everyone in our zip code from the university to make sure that they know what we're planning and to invite them to open houses on campus and in the neighborhood as well. And then in about a year, just over a year's time, we'll be seeking approval from our Board of Trustees for the plan and the CEQA approvals as well. And then lastly, while these are not part of our master plan, two of these are not part of our master plan, we did want to mention that we're excited about two projects that are breaking ground over the next few months. One is a student housing project just off of 19th and Holloway at Varela and Holloway, 560 beds of student housing with ground floor retail. And then a new building for our College of Liberal and Creative Arts, which will house our renowned Broadcast, Electronic, and Communication Arts program, or BECA. And we're really excited about that as well. And then two other near-term projects are a new science building at 19th and Buckingham, and then what's called the Lower Valley Community on that slide, which is first-year housing, which we desperately need. And we'd welcome any questions or comments you have for us. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. Yep, and then we'll open it up to public comment, and then we may have questions.
Just real quickly, we really, Jeremy Shaw from the Planning Department Citywide Division, joined by Josh Switsky, Manager of Housing and Land Use, and we just wanted to commend the staff. If the six or staff people attending today with the president or any sign, they've been very collaborative and very open with the planning department and other agencies in the city. So we're very supportive of their efforts and appreciative of their collaboration. Many of the commitments in the MOU have been fulfilled already, and the path to the remainder of them is clear and transparent with us. The staff approached the planning department as well as MTA and others in January with the draft of the vision you saw today, and we provided comments, many of which they've already addressed in amendments and enhancements. So we're really happy to be collaborating with them and expect to continue the collaboration by commenting on the scope in the draft of the EIR, the MOU, as Jason mentioned, and ongoing sort of monitoring of methods and data that come in from their transportation analyses. So we're looking forward to that, and Josh and I are happy to answer any questions as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's first see if we have any public comment on this item. Any public comment? Mr. David?
Todd David again on behalf of the HAC. So I really want to compliment SF State. They've done an amazing job. I've had an opportunity to meet with them a handful of times. I'm just super impressed with the way that they are doing this master plan and the outreach. And I do think it is really worthwhile noting that they are under no obligation to come and speak to the Planning Commission about this, right? They have a totally different track to get things approved, and I think that really demonstrates the fact their willingness to come here and be so transparent, what like great partners they are. It's an amazing group of people working there, and I think it's a really phenomenal master plan. I'm really looking forward to seeing it get in place. Anyway, thanks.
Thank you. Any additional public comment?
My parents moved into Stonestown in 1945. That's all they could afford. It was military housing for the war. The war ended early. It was turned back to the Stones family. I grew up there. It was military housing. It desperately needs work. They need to do something with the Stonestown apartments. When the state bought it, they were very nice to my mom. They allowed her to continue living there until she passed away. But this facility needs work, and they should be doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and open it up to commissioner comments or questions. Commissioner Moore.
Just very happy to see the university jumping on student housing in such an aggressive way. I think it's fantastic. When we were hearing Park Merced a number of years ago, there was very uncertainty about student housing and concerns that many students had to live next door, and taking away housing from those needed privately occupied residents. But seeing this now at a large scale is fantastic, and I'm very impressed and very happy that you are looking at such a vision for your future. Thank you.
Commissioner Melgar.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Wong and Mr. Porth, for the presentation. So I attended San Francisco State as an undergrad and lived in Mary Park Hall, and it was really old then. And it is even older now. And I do think that our students deserve better. So I'm really glad that this is being done. Housing affordability in the city has gotten way worse than since I went to college, and it was a struggle then. So I think it is an integral part, as Mr. Porth said, of ensuring success for many first generation in their family students who go to college at San Francisco State, all of the immigrant students who go to San Francisco State. I think it's also really great that we're looking at this as a master plan. I live in Ingleside Terraces as well, and I know that the campus, the students, the faculty are a really important part of the economic life of the entire 19th Avenue corridor, Stonestown, Ocean Avenue, the whole stretch on Ocean between San Francisco State and City College. There are lots of businesses that caters to students and faculty. So I'm really glad that we're looking at sort of the long term, and that the planning department has been working with your staff to think about the entire region. And as we're looking forward to the Park Merced redevelopment, I think it is really important that we look at the long-term plan for the campus and the transportation issues, the environmental issues, and all of the things that go together. So thank you very much for coming to do this presentation and reaching out to us that you didn't have to. So we really appreciate that you did. Thank you.
Thanks. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you. I just also want to say I appreciate the comment that San Francisco State is proud that San Francisco is its home. And as a citizen of San Francisco, I have to say I constantly feel proud of San Francisco State, and that we have a world-class institution that provides a world-class and accessible education to folks of all backgrounds, and whose student body population reflects the diversity and vibrancy of our city. I think land use is so important, not just because of the buildings, as you also said, but also because of the opportunity that things like housing opens up for people. And I feel like the ability to grow your housing and other facilities to be able to make sure that students are successful while at the same time alleviating some of the pressures off of the larger San Francisco housing market is a win-win. And I also agree that just looking holistically at this as a master plan, I think is a great step. So I'm really excited to see the evolution of this master plan, and just thank you so much for coming.
Great, thank you. Just a question to staff. So on the process here, because they're a state agency, we don't certify the EIR. We are just we're a commenter. And so we've got this great opportunity, though, I think, to partner early. But that's correct, right? They issue and certify their EIR.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and thank you. All right, and just, I echo my fellow commissioners. I think San Francisco State has touched us all, whether we've gone there or not. It's an extremely important institution in this city, and I'm glad we're kind of helping you tackle some of the challenges you have, especially around housing. So thank you very much for being here and letting us be part of this.
Commissioners, we can move on to item 8 for case number 2018-000971 COA at 2001 37th Avenue. This is a conditional use authorization.
Okay, so not the. Good afternoon, President Hillis, fellow commissioners, Jeff Horn, Planning Department staff. Item before you is a conditional use authorization at the campus of St. Ignatius College Preparatory, located at 2001 37th Avenue in the Sunset District in an RH1 zoning district. The project proposes the expansion of a private secondary school to increase maximum student enrollment by 100 students, from 1,500 to 1,600 students. The additional students will be restricted to the enrollment in a new 6th through 8th grade middle school, the Father Sauer Academy. Classes for the academy will occur within the existing classrooms on campus, but the project is seeking approval for a potential buildable envelope of a 1,300 square foot pad, existing concrete pad in the middle of the campus. St. Ignatius maintains a robust public outreach list and did their own mailings and notifications and meetings on this project, in addition to staff's mail outs. I did receive several comments with concerns about the 100 additional students somehow being allocated or allowed to enroll in the high school. The concern being that the high school age kids would potentially be of driving age and could lead to additional vehicle and traffic and parking impacts. The project is being conditioned to explicitly only allow the enrollment to be allowed within this new established middle school. Any additional enrollment to the high school would have to seek additional conditional use authorization here at the Planning Commission. Therefore, staff recommends authorization of the conditional use authorization to expand the existing campus pursuant to sections 209.1 and section 303. Additionally, the St. Ignatius has, as an active and involved institution in the Sunset and the city as a whole, St. Ignatius has prepared and submitted for your review a 10-year scoped institutional master plan describing future maintenance, renovations, and projects that could be sought in the future and seen by this commission. No action is required by the commission, as the secondary school is not subject to Planning Code section 304.5, and this is purely an informational item. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions.
All right, thank you. Project sponsor. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. I'm Ken Stupa. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the school. I thought I'd just spend a few minutes describing the Father Sauer Academy for you, just have a nice idea of what it is. So it's a middle school, grades 6 through 8. Right now we have a 6th grade class with 24 kids in it. It's going to have an enrollment of a maximum of 90. We have envisioned about 27 kids come into the 6th grade in the upcoming September class. It is completely free. It's paid for completely by donations. And to get accepted, students have to qualify for the federal free lunch program. So it's designed for poor. and 100% of the students live in San Francisco. So it's and it's got minimal impact on the neighborhood as far as all the kids are bused in. This year we used vans just because we only had 24, but next year we'll go to a bus service. So it'll just be one bus coming across town, making one route. So just give you some background on that, and I can open it up for questions that you might have.
All right, thank
Again,
you.
thank you for your time.
Thanks. We'll first open it up to public comment, if there's any on this item. Any public comment on item 8? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and open it up to commissioner comments, questions, or motions. Commissioner Koppel.
Being our representative from the west side of town, I don't have a problem with this project at all. I think the number of increased students is relatively modest, and I don't see any 6th or 8th graders driving around taking up too many parking spaces.
Commissioner Moore?
We have other situations where schools are coming forward with increased enrollment. We have only seen them really working it out. I believe that this one is very thoroughly worked out, and again, 6th to 8th graders don't drive, so unless they're going to drive driverless cars, but I don't think that's very near to happen yet, so here we go.
Make a motion to approve.
There is no information, there's no approval. I think it's informational.
No,
we don't have
this
approval.
item is an action item.
Yeah,
Okay.
conditional use.
Second.
Sorry, second.
Commissioners, there's a motion that has been seconded to approve this matter with conditions on that motion. Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Koppel?
Aye.
Commissioner Moore?
Yes. Aye.
Commissioner Richards?
Aye.
And Commission President Hillis?
Aye.
So moved, Commissioners. That motion passes unanimously 5-0. Commissioners, I believe there was a misunderstanding by some members of the audience or the public, and so we are going to go back to general public comment to allow them to submit their testimony.
So thank you very much for the confusion. My name is Pat Buskovich. I'm a native. These people are natives. They live in the Mission. Sister would like to go to the backyard to see the sun. To do that, we have to put an ADA ramp in the backyard. We filed the plans, and the city is requiring us to pay a $4,500 fee for a civil right. So we're asking the commission if you could agendize, is it appropriate to have to pay for a variance for a civil right? I don't think it is. And I don't know any other way to get around this.
It's helpful to speak into the mic there so we can hear you.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. I just want to share a short story that my sisters and I had when we were trying to park today. And we were talking about the placard that she has. And she was commenting on how it was going to expire. And we were talking about it, and I asked her, I go, how much do you pay for that every year? She says, I don't pay anything. She goes, I just go in and renew it, and that's it. I don't pay anything. And that allows her to have access to the city. You know, over here, we came early. We came about 12:30, looking for a space. And finally, we found one. But we engaged in that conversation, which I wasn't aware of. And I thought, well, all she's really asking for is a meaningful exercise of the ADA. You know, just trying to give people like her just used to normal things. You know, the sun, you know, air.
So to be able to get into the backyard, we need an ADA ramp. To get an ADA ramp, we require a variance, believe it or not. To require a variance is $4,500 they don't have. I'm not charging him. He's going to build it himself. It's the planning department now is preventing someone to be able to go see the sun. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Commissioners, if there's nothing further, we can move back.
Commissioner Moore?
Is it possible that we discuss an item like it in our ADU discussion?
Well, I think we can ask, I think we can ask the director to look into this and to kind of bring us back a solution if he can, or the zoning administrator. But I think, we can ask staff and the director to kind of, to look at this.
We'll definitely do that. Just so you know, it's the unfortunate reality a few years ago is that the board took away any discretion I had to reduce fees. But we need to figure something out here, obviously.
Yeah.
So we will do our best to get back to you on that.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioners, that'll place this under your regular calendar for items 9A and B for case numbers 2015-015010 CUA and OFA at 1 DeHaro Street. This is a conditional use authorization and office development authorization.
Good afternoon, President Hillis and members of the Commission, Doug Vu, Department staff. The proposed project before you is a request for conditional use authorization to allow office use that would support the development of new PDR space, and an office development application to authorize 86,301 square feet of new office space in a newly constructed 129,619 square foot, 4-story and 58-foot tall mixed-use building that, in addition to the office space, would also contain 43,318 square feet of future PDR uses, 14 off-street parking spaces, 2 off-street loading, and 36 Class 1 bicycle parking spaces. The project also proposes streetscape improvements, including new sidewalk construction on Berry Street, sidewalk widening on DeHaro Street, a new bulb out at Division Street, street lighting, trees, landscaping, bicycle parking racks, and 2 publicly accessible open space plazas. Prior to construction, approximately 10,620 square feet of existing PDR space within several vacant warehouses on the project site would be demolished, and the development also proposes the merger of lots 3 and 4. The project site is located in the PDR 1G zoning district and the Showplace Square Potrero Hill area plan. The surrounding context contains a broadly mixed pattern of light industrial, office, wholesale, commercial, retail sales, and residential uses commonly found within the UMU, PDR, and Mission Bay redevelopment zone properties. The adjacent properties include a 2-story multi-unit commercial building at 25 Division Street containing restaurant and retail uses across DeHaro Street to the west, Recology's Golden Gate Administrative Office and Collection Truck Yard across Berry Street to the south and east, and the 601 King Street mixed-use development containing 226 dwelling units to the north. The legislation to renew Planning Code Section 210.3C, which allows office use in a PDR district, will be considered by the Board of Supervisors next week. As a criterion, the sponsor has developed and submitted a PDR business plan that includes a strategy for identifying potential PDR tenants, marketing and outreach to target them, and accessible pricing to retain tenants over time. As required, the business plan was developed in coordination with the Office of Economic and Workforce Development and has been accepted in its final form. As part of the project sponsor's submittal in your packet, the proposed development has received 7 letters of support from neighboring groups such as Potrero Boosters, Showplace East, Recology, California College of the Arts, and De Anza Properties, and organizations including Walk SF and Firefighters Local 798. After analyzing all aspects of the project, department staff finds that the project is, on balance, consistent with the objectives and policies of the general plan and Showplace Square Potrero Hill area plan. 1 DeHaro Street will replace a vacant and underutilized PDR space with a mixed-use building containing net new PDR and office use that will provide a dynamic space for emerging economic activities to flourish and promote business growth and innovation. The project would utilize approximately 4.2% of the office space available for allocation, and it will actually subsidize the new PDR space and contribute to the city's economy. The proposed building is well-designed in consideration of its surroundings, compatible with the existing mix of land uses, and will enhance the neighborhood character with a visually appealing design that will be constructed with sustainable, high-quality materials to create an environment that will improve the public realm through an open space and through an open and transparent ground floor, significant streetscape improvements, and publicly accessible open space to activate the adjacent streets and improve traffic safety. The department finds the project to be necessary, desirable, and compatible with the surrounding neighborhood and not detrimental to persons or adjacent properties in the vicinity. Based on these findings and those described in the draft motions, the department recommends approval of the conditional use authorization and office development allocation with conditions contingent upon the renewal of Planning Code Section 210.3C, and including an amendment to the condition of approval for a community liaison to also notify and engage with community members to coordinate and provide construction activity updates. This concludes my presentation, and I am available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Vu. Project sponsor. Welcome.
Good afternoon, President Hillis, Commissioners, Director Ram. Dan Kingsley with SKS Partners. I'm going to yield most of my time to my colleagues. I just wanted to mention that there are a number of individuals who rarely get recognized when projects like One Daharo come in front of the Planning Commission, and that would be the city staff, in particular the Planning Department staff. They invest hundreds of hours working on this project and others, and I think it's important that they're given the recognition for being the professionals that they are, looking out for the built environment of San Francisco. So with that, I'd like to yield to John Nicolai, who's our partner in this project.
Good afternoon, members of the Commission, Director Ram, and members of the community in attendance. My name is John Nicolai, and I represent a fourth-generation San Francisco family that has proudly owned this property at One Daharo for over 80 years. My grandfather started San Francisco Gravel Company, a building materials business, on this site in 1925, and it's been managed by my family for 3 generations. We decided to close the building materials business 4 years ago, and we began to work on considering different options for this site. We started a conversation with SKS Partners at that time and immediately realized that we shared the same values and wanted to build something that could benefit long-term San Francisco. Throughout the process, SKS has been an extraordinary advocate on our behalf, helping to fulfill a family's desire to develop a site that means so much to us, and with a new and innovative project that we will be proud of. This was the most important factor in deciding what we wanted to do with this property. Our family will maintain an ownership interest in the project with the entitlements we're hopeful we will get approval for today. SKS has constantly been attentive to the community needs, going above and beyond communicating the benefits of this project with our immediate neighbors. We ask for your approval today, and we are proud to stand beside SKS as our sponsors on this important project for the future of San Francisco. I will now turn this presentation over to John Fisher, who has directly led the project team. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Commissioners, President Hillis, Director Ram, thanks for having me today. My name is John Fisher with SKS. I've been the project manager in charge of One Daharo. I'd like to first thank the Nicolai family for selecting us to be their partners. They've been great partners with us. 4 generations is a long time to operate in San Francisco, and only 26 years for SKS seems like a short amount of time. Most of those 26 years of SKS's experience has been with Foul Long Architecture, and they've been a great partner throughout this. Just a little more background on the site. It's located at the corner of Berry and Daharo Street and forms that triangular shape. It's in the Showplace Square, Potrero Hill neighborhoods in the Eastern Neighborhoods Area Plan. As you can see, the site is currently occupied by several functionally obsolete warehouse buildings, and the former gravel yard is really past its useful life, so it's a ripe infill opportunity. In terms of planning and zoning, this is a code compliant or a zoning compliant project, and we are seeking a conditional use authorization for an office allocation under Section 210.3C of the code. This commission approved that on May 3rd, and then it received unanimous approval on its first reading at the Board of Supervisors Tuesday. the legislation allows for a ratio of 2-to-1 office to PDR, and we are achieving that ratio with this design here. I'd now like to turn it over to our architect, Evan Jacob, to walk through the design for you. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Evan Jacob with Fallon Architecture. Just wanted to take a few minutes to go over some of the key architectural points for the project. One Daharo is really about innovative planning expressed architecturally through its structure and then wrapped in a simple yet detailed facade. At the ground floor, we have our PDR uses. PDR needs to be a durable and flexible space. Concrete achieves that goal by being a durable and a flexible material. Moving up through the building to the office levels, office space wants to be flexible and beautiful, so we're achieving that through mass timber, in this case through a glue-lam frame and cross-laminated timber floors. Now, cross-laminated timber is a newer technology in North America, but it's been around for about 20 years in Europe. We chose it because it's sustainable, it's lighter and faster than steel and concrete, and it's beautiful. Wrapping all that is a simple enclosure, a curtain wall system that has detail, depth, sun shading, and is dynamic on Berry Street. Looking at the Daharo Street facade here, we see the CLT structure through the curtain wall, the warmth and quality of that material. We see the depth of the curtain wall itself with front and rear glazing, and we also, in this case, are seeing the vertical fin sun shading devices on the Daharo Street side. Moving around the building to Berry Street, we're addressing the corner by setting the curtain wall back subtly. We are introducing and expressing our two stair towers on Berry Street, and we're also introducing dynamic elements such as sliding wood sunscreens behind the facade. On the right here, we have an example of what those sunscreens might look like. On the left, we can see in real life the quality of CLT through the glazing. Looking at a floor plan, we moved the tenant spaces towards the street to activate the street, then move the core elements towards the north. What that does is it buffers the light industrial uses from the residential uses to the north. To the north of that is our yard, which is built over a existing sewer easement. Now that yard isn't just the back door that's messy loading dock. We want this to be a central social space serving both the office tenants and the PDR tenants. This is a quick peek at what the PDR suite might look like. Again, concrete is the durable and flexible material that we're looking for, but it's also connecting to the street through the storefront and roll-up doors. And I'd like to wrap up by showing a few context renderings. This is looking at the corner of Berry Street and Daharo. This is looking at the end of Division Street, the beginning of Daharo and King Street, pointing out the gap between our building and 888 7th created by the sewer easement. This gap is about as wide as a city street. In fact, it's wider than Daharo and King and a little bit narrower than Berry Street. And I'd like to finish up with this overall view and hand it back to John, who wants to talk about streetscape.
Thanks, Evan. I'm going to talk a little bit about the community benefits associated with One Daharo. I'll start with the streetscape. So throughout our community engagement process, we heard the need for more public open space. So we are pleased to be contributing some of our property towards enhancing the existing greenway at 888 7th Street. And you can see that on the diagram here. On top of this open space, we'll also be contributing amenities that will help make this place safer, more comfortable, and more usable for our neighbors. In addition to the open space, we also saw a dire need to improve the pedestrian safety at the intersection of King, Division, and Daharo. And we worked with the city as well as our neighbors to develop this design, which reconfigures that intersection to a three-way stop and makes it much safer. We've shared this with the neighbors, and people of the community think it's a really great improvement. In addition to the public open space in the intersection, we're also adding new sidewalks on both frontages of the property, as well as street trees and other amenities. As a requirement of the 210(3)C legislation, we developed a PDR business plan with the Mayor's Office of Economic and Workforce Development, as well as members of the PDR community. OEWD has reviewed this plan and approved it, and you can find that plan in your packet. One part of the plan I do want to highlight is Human Made, a nonprofit focused at education and workforce training for underserved communities in San Francisco, and we're really pleased to be dedicating a quarter of our space to Human Made at a below market rate. Finally, the community engagement. SKS is really proud of the effort we put in on community engagement, and input from our neighbors really did influence elements of the design. And going forward, we are committed to being a community liaison as we enter construction. We want to maintain our good relationship with the neighbors. And with that, thank you all for your time. I really appreciate it, and we're here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll open this item up to public comment if there is any.
My name is Carla Leshny. I'm speaking as an individual and not a representative of the 8887th HOA. I live at 526 Berry, which is the closest residential unit to the proposed project, and I have some concerns about noise and shade. The developers have met with our community and done great outreach. However, the use of the open space adjoining our property seems less than ideal. As a parking lot and with a loading dock across from residential units. We understand from the developer that the dock will not be used much, but it still creates an impact to have a parking lot next to one of the only public open spaces in the area. The CEQA study was not required to look at the park since it's not under Park and Rec jurisdiction. However, the developer did a shade study for us, which we appreciated, and it showed that in the winter there would be shade both on the entire park and on our units down on the first floor the entire day. So again, the developer did great communication and outreach. They've made some verbal commitments to help maintain the park and to help improve the area. I have reached out to Doug Vu about my concerns last week and previously about the loading dock, and I found him to be somewhat unresponsive. It was only through the nudging of other planning staff that he got back to me the previous time last year, and this time he did not return my call or email. So just to let you know that we are concerned about the shadow. And I do have a sunny, bright, south-facing unit, so I'm a bit distressed.
All right, thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Sherry Janeja. I am the homeowner at 528 Berry Street, and my unit is adjacent to Carla's unit who just spoke. And I wanted to say thank you to the developers for doing wonderful community outreach to us. We have voiced our concerns to them, but I wanted to bring our concerns in front of the commissioners too. We have this public park, as Carla mentioned. It is the only public park in our neighborhood, and it is extensively used by people, children, and dogs all the time. During the winter, this building is going to cast a shadow on this park, and we're worried about our landscape also, wondering how it's going to remain when it has extensive shadow throughout the winter. There are also 14 parkings on the ground floor that are adjacent to our units. And we're very concerned about noise from these cars, but also more concerned about exhaust fumes coming into our homes from these cars. Our 3 units are the closest to this parking lot. We're also concerned about exhaust fumes from the cars into the public park where they're going to be used by people and children. I'm also very concerned about the noise coming from the PDR element in this building. Last year, the property owner did permit a 48-hour rave to go on. There were people that were completely drugged out and running on the streets. We made extensive complaints to the city and also to the developer, and it was only after the second party was permitted that there have been no parties so far. So we're very, very concerned about the noise also going forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next speaker, please.
I have a handout for the commissioners. Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is J.R. Epler, and I'm president of the Potrero Boosters Neighborhood Association. We believe that this is a project that demonstrates well the value of working with the community. The developer, SKS, has worked closely with the Boosters Development Committee and membership over the last year, and we believe the result is a project that exemplifies the benefit of collaborative process with the community. Since its first designs were circulated last year, the project has evolved in a very positive direction. Our committee members are appreciative of the overall design, noting its overall elegance, LEED rating, flexible floor plans, and features such as the rooftop treatments. We also believe, although there are still some concerns that should likely be addressed, that the developer has worked well with its immediate neighbors. I have seen SKS folks in those very contentious meetings that we have on area parking plans trying to advocate on behalf of its neighbors, residential neighbors to the north, in order to generate a nice parking plan. They're also working on ways of increasing the amount of open space in an area that is bereft of it. The result, we believe, is an attractive project that contributes to the mixed-use character of the neighborhood, and that is a reason why the Potrero Boosters membership has unanimously endorsed this project. However, there's one little component that was part of this endorsement that we're still trying to work through, and it's to the benefit of those neighbors of the north, and that is to ensure that there is a community liaison that operates well with the issues around construction, and to ensure that notice is given to the community and not simply just to the zoning administrator as was initially drafted in the conditions of approval. As a result, we are requesting that the language that has been passed out, language that we have had inserted into the conditions of approval for other projects in our neighborhood, be placed in these conditions of approval to ensure that this wonderful relationship continues smoothly as the project is built out and as people begin to move in. Thank you very much. We hope that you approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Epler. Next speaker, please. Ms. Heath.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Allison Heath. It's been a while. I hope you haven't missed me too much. I'm here also on behalf of the Potrero Boosters Neighborhood Association, speaking in support of the project. Over the last couple of years, the Boosters have developed a set of criteria to help us negotiate projects that are better for the neighborhood with genuine community benefits and fewer negative impacts. We try to engage developers early in the process and expect them to comply with design principles that are now only 30 seconds.
No, sorry.
We got,
okay.
You're going to get more.
That are now formally articulated in the urban design guidelines, but we also advocate for on-site affordable and family-friendly housing, active ground floors with neighborhood-serving businesses, and on-site open space. As traffic conditions have become increasingly congested, we discourage on-site parking and look to the city's transportation demand management program and transit improvements to help reduce reliance on private vehicles. We are paying particular attention to formerly industrial sites with contamination and expect developers to adhere to strict standards of remediation. This is why we ask that each project appoint a community liaison to notify neighbors of construction and remediation activities and field complaints and questions from the neighbors. SKS has worked closely with us over the last year, and the result is a project that checks the boxes and exemplifies the benefit of a collaborative process with the community. As I mentioned in my letter, although we appreciate that SKS has limited private vehicle parking on site and they recognize the need for adequate loading and commercial zones for TNCs and delivery trucks, we do have some lingering concerns about increased congestion resulting from the mandated bulb outs. If I could have the overhead, please. There we go. There is, however, a good opportunity here to provide some community benefit. We'd love to see landscaping on the large bulb out across the street, right here, to soften the massive amount of concrete. We know that the neighbors are desperate for open space and hope that greening can be included in the final plans for that corner. That's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Heath. Next speaker, please.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Ryan Spurlock, and I am the founder and executive director of Human Made. I'm excited and honored to have the necessary support and foundation to bring a much-needed project like this to San Francisco. Human Made is a nonprofit, community-based manufacturing and prototyping studio on a mission to democratize access to the tools of innovation to individuals from all walks of life. We are a first-of-its-kind facility that was explicitly founded to be the bridge for individuals to gain the skills to technologically enhance manufacturing, prototyping, and design jobs in the Bay Area. San Francisco and the Bay Area are at an economic and cultural tipping point. While there is more wealth in the area than ever before, entire communities of people do not have access to the skills and networks needed to participate and thrive in our robust economy. Human Made aims to offer a solution. Human Made will offer a space to learn and master the skills needed for the modern maker economy. With established onboarding and placement partners, we could rapidly get people on the market for employment, thus creating more market-ready, qualified employees in the Bay Area faster than ever before. Projects like Human Made are only possible with proper support, and SKS and the One Daharo project have been the foundation of that support. In addition to providing seed funding, along with below-market rates and a permanent home for the program, SKS partners have created a place where tenants will have access to skilled candidates and training all in one place, a place where community collaboration is not only encouraged but fostered and supported. I've been part of the maker community for many years, and I've witnessed our work change so many lives. I've watched people come in with little to no skill, not only learn how to master modern manufacturing, but have transformative experiences that redefine their life's path and often their self-worth and purpose. It can reshape the way people view the world, allowing them not only to think outside the box, but how to redefine that box and build a better one for the future. In consideration of all of those who will be positively affected by Human Made and the One Daharo project, we respectfully ask for your support and approval of this project. Thank you all for your time today.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Weldon Hall. I'm the founder of Oak Labs, a rapid prototyping and customization shop located in the Bay Area. Amongst my other titles, accolades, and certifications, ones that I relate to quite clearly and dearly is that of a maker or inventor. I've been an aspiring inventor, tinkerer all my life, from the times that I got in trouble for taking apart the cable box at home to the times I received my first patent award. I have always been the same person that has yearned for the opportunity to invent, create, and shape our interface to the world that surrounds us all. As a former member of the tech shop, I quickly learned how to safely operate most of the equipment in the shop and grew to rely on the equipment access as I was consistently doing prototype development and fabrication work for a local startup. The ease with which I could iterate and develop our thoughts and ideas was unparalleled. This propelled me to be able to start my own business and to network with my local community for future opportunities as well. This level of connected creation has always been a dream of mine, and I think it is only right that this dream should be afforded to everyone, man, woman, or child. Regardless of age, economic, or ethnic background, there exists an amazing amount of untapped potential and creative talent in the minds of our residents, and all they really need is the training, access, and opportunity to succeed. Being afforded the skills and resources for advanced fabrication gives every willing individual a chance to nurture those skills and create their own pathway toward their future successes. It should be no surprise and no mystery to any of us that there are too many underprivileged and underserved groups here in this technological metropolis of the Bay Area. We can, we should, and we will do more if we can continue to work together to create avenues of access to the opportunities that Human Made and SKS is pioneering. It's always the right time to start making our world a better place, and I hope that you will consider approving this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Janet Lees with SF Made, and I'm reading from a letter written by Kate Sophis, our CEO. Dear President Hillis and Commissioners, SF Made strongly urges the Commission to approve the development proposal located at One Daharo Street in San Francisco. The property at One Daharo will be the second property after the manufacturing foundry at 150 Hooper to take advantage of San Francisco's inclusionary PDR special zoning. When complete, this project will offer approximately 42,500 square feet of new PDR space, of which 10,500 square feet is proposed to be long-term and deeply affordable. SF Made is both a mentor to and the non-profit fiscal sponsor for Human Made, which will serve over 1,000 individuals annually, 30% of whom will benefit from deeply subsidized access to training. Human Made will build on SF Made's existing partnerships with key workforce organizations in the Bayview, the Mission, the Tenderloin, Soma, and the Western Addition to ensure that their communities directly benefit from the workforce development and skill-based training offered. Furthermore, SKS is committed to connecting these same communities to employment opportunities with other tenants at Wanda Harrow, ensuring that adults and youth from these historically underserved communities will finally have an economic on-ramp to the city's growing tech, design and maker economy. SKS has already proven to be an excellent community partner to our SF Made Human Made collaboration, providing both expertise and resources to support Human Made's launch, as well as the commitment of long-term affordable space at Wanda Harrow. We're also very excited to see another new and robust PDR property come online in the Showplace Potrero neighbourhood. Wanda Harrow will be proximate to SF Made's manufacturing foundry and CCA, along with other established manufacturers such as Anchor Brewing. As such, Wanda Harrow will help solidify Showplace Square as a vibrant, accessible maker neighbourhood, one that's both transit connected and economically connected to the very residential communities who most need the skills, employment and maker entrepreneurship support that Human Made and other tenants will offer. SF Made urges your enthusiastic support for the Wanda Harrow project and the jobs and community benefits it creates. Thank you. And I have a copy of the letter here for you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lees. Next speaker, please, Mr. Meckel.
Thank you. David Meckel, Director of Campus Planning for California College of the Arts. President Hillis, Commissioners. You should have a letter from me in your packet, so I won't reread that. However, unlike Ryan, I couldn't get J.K. Deneen to write an article in the Chronicle about why I'm excited about this project, so I do want to say something. This is a fabulous team here, this team of SKS and Fowl Long, and we've been benefiting from their insight and skill in doing infill projects and reuse projects in our neighborhood for a number of years. They lovingly restored and reused the Jessica McClintock building at 15th and DeHaro, right across the street from us, and John was the lead on that. And they recently completed a flip of the McGuire Furniture building at Bryant and 9th, which is spectacular. And this skill in understanding community, understanding urban fabric, reusing existing buildings, I think comes to play in the buildings when they do them new. And it's really what we like about this team. They're able to blend the context and new technologies. We're also a little bit jealous that they're going to do the first cross-laminated timber building in our neighborhood. And in 2 weeks, I'm going to have Studio Gang here, and we're going to show you the second one. But they're going to beat us. And it's really exciting to have this kind of sustainability going into our neighborhood, and to have buildings that explain how they're made, and to have uses in those buildings that are about making. Urge you to support the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meckel. Next speaker, please.
Todd David on behalf of the HAC. I think Mr. Meckel stole my thunder and pretty much what I wanted to say. It fills my heart with joy to hear of all the community members talking about what great partners SKS was from a outreach and communication point of view. Like, that is just so nice to hear that, you know, even if there were some disagreements or stuff like that, they felt like that they were good communication partners, and that is exactly what we at HAC strive for our business members to be, is good communication partners. The other thing that the cross-laminated timber aspect of this project really should not be overlooked. It is phenomenal that this is the first cross-laminated timber project in this neighborhood. You know, it's something that we've been talking about a little bit here at the commission, that we at HAC really feel like it is a potential cost saver in housing. And, you know, and I had a conversation with the Mayor's Office of Housing the other day. 3 current projects that they're looking at, 3 current projects, cost per unit is coming in north of $900,000 for a subsidized affordable housing project. And so we need to find cost savings potentially anywhere we can. And I do believe that they have seen in Europe and Canada that cross-laminated timber is an option to bring down the cost of materials and construction. So, you know, I think that we really need to be looking at it very closely in San Francisco. I'm not an expert on kind of how the process goes to get different materials into the code. I know that there's an international, that it just passed the international, and then it kind of floats down to the state level and the city level. But there is a possibility, there is a path to get cross-laminated timber into the building code in San Francisco before just kind of it would naturally occur through the process. So once again, I think it's something that we really need to look at, and this is a very exciting project. And my congratulations to the team and to the neighborhood for working together on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. David. Ms. Hester.
Sue Hester, this is an office and PDR project. The owners have done a good thing on their outreach, and they are a model. But you've heard concerns over the course of this hearing and other items, that there are still some concerns. I believe the Potrero Boosters recommendation there be active monitoring during construction is something that you should add to your conditions. You've also had a presentation on the last public comment on the importance of sunlight, and that issue came up in the testimony from the woman who lived on Berry Street. Residential people in a conflict area where there's other uses need to have access to sunlight. And whether or not it's under the jurisdiction of Rec Park or not is irrelevant. It's a concern. It should be dealt with. And I think this owner is already on the path to do that. Secondarily, you've had colleges before you today in two cases, SF State and CCAC. SF State and Hastings and UCSF don't come to you on the irregular IMP process. We have to go to the state legislature to make them deal with the community, but we've done it successfully in San Francisco. Real colleges dealing with transportation and housing issues and how they fit into the community are really important. This is a project that fits into the community. The other thing I wanted, can I have the overhead? In your legislation that you approved last week, the whole planning process disregarded the planning staff. There is nothing here on office allocation. Office allocations, no notice, no notice, no notice, 20-day posting. This is an office allocation, but for it being new construction with the PDR, it wouldn't be noticed at all. Office allocation need to be approved by the commission. No one from the staff, when they saw this and it said, why don't we use the process improvements legislation to require notice for conversions of PDR, conversions of retail to office? We have a whole lot of them. They're in basically south of Market and Mission. But for things like this, which make it a commission hearing, there's no notice to the public. That's sad. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any additional public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Commissioner Koppel.
Yeah, in order to express what this lot needs, I think you need to go down and see what's there right now. In the past, I used to attend workouts at the CrossFit Potrero Hill, a couple blocks away on DeHaro. We would run down and back for our warm-ups and during the workouts, and it wasn't the most pleasant pathway to go down. So I really think that this lot needs some beautification, it needs some development, and I think this is one of the most all-around great projects I've seen in my almost 2 years up here on the commission. I know SKS has a great history here in the city, developing 270 Brannan, 1400 16th Street, and as well 1201 Bryant. And I'm really impressed to hear the team attitude here, working with the the four generational local landowner here. 43,000 square feet of PDR space. I don't think we've seen anything like that ever. And that's just an amazing testament to the roundedness of this project and what it brings to the neighborhood where I think it belongs. I really like the innovative building methods. I'm really impressed with the low-income PDR business plan that's already in place. The design is just impeccable, and I think the building has a real open feel in general, and I think it's completely appropriate at this location.
Thanks. Commissioner Johnson.
Thanks. I have to say, I think the quote of the day for me so far is one that was said around the San Francisco State project, which is just that these projects are more than about the buildings or brick and mortar. They're really about what buildings enable us to do. And I had the opportunity to sit down with the project sponsors and then go walk the area and have to agree. I think it's a real opportunity space. And when I think about what should go in there, having a design that's reflective of the future of work and connection to community is incredibly important, and I think what this space offers. I love that the PDR space took into account the changing nature and possible future of work. We don't know what kids will be doing 4 years from now when they graduate from CCA, but it'll probably be around tech, being a maker or design work. And I totally agree that this fits in with the community. Thinking about the opportunity for streetscape improvements that will improve walkability and activate the ground floor in that neighborhood is great. And I do believe that we can come into agreements around kind of the green space and the light. And I was happy to see the addition of the community liaison. And actually, I wanted to ask Mr. Vu, just to clarify, because this has come up a few times, you did mention that there was an amendment to add the community liaison.
That's correct.
Right.
The project sponsor reached out to the department yesterday, and as part of my presentation, I asked that as part of this approval, you include an amendment to the condition. In the past, the condition was separate from the one that we already use under the community liaison. So I just recommended that we actually combine that language into this existing condition so that it's more consistent. And I have it here if you'd like me to read it real quick. Okay, so there's the standard condition of approval that we include in most entitlements that requires the designation of a community liaison. But what we're proposing to add is, I state that additionally, prior to commencing excavation or construction, the community liaison officer shall issue a notice of public meeting to discuss the proposed construction dust management plan and stormwater management plan prior to its finalization. The notice will also inform neighbors how to sign up for notifications on construction progress. The community liaison officer shall provide updates regarding the construction activities related to the project and address any complaints and questions from the community members. So that's the additional language.
Great, thank you. And then finally, I just wanted to also comment on the exciting allocation of space to Human Made. I think we desperately need workforce development programs in our city and community. And having the space for Human Made to be there with a link into the tenants that are going to be there, I think provides a potential model for the city and how we can both address the issue of nonprofit displacement, which is a huge land use issue in our city, while at the same time providing opportunity to folks.
Thanks. Commissioner Fong.
Thank you. I think there are many reasons to like this project. The word thoughtful comes to mind mostly. In the design, I think it is incredible. I think it's a beautiful design. I hope we see more projects like this, but it is thoughtful. I think the project sponsor is very thoughtful in how they've reached out to the community, and for Ms. Hester to mention that it's a model example, I think is impressive. The neighborhood liaison, I think, is a great idea. Probably more projects should have that, and I'm glad that they took the opportunity to be proactive and move that forward. Obviously, partnership with SF Made is great, and I am supportive of this project. And from a design perspective, very curious to hear Commissioner Moore's comments next.
Commissioner Moore.
I can only say it makes your heart beat faster. It's a beautiful project, and I couldn't be happier to seeing it as innovative and transformational, not only about how it brought people together. We had a stellar group of people supporting it, from the Potrero boosters, who have spent years and years learning how to guide architects into appropriate architecture in their district, but also to have SF Made supported, see the human-made components spring from there in the teaching way, and just solidify Showplace Square with, as a maker and entrepreneur neighborhood, with CCA leading the way, having been the institutional component which is so strong anchor in the district. I think it's a beautiful project, and it's really happy to see that the San Francisco Building and Construction Trade supports it, because this is pre-manufactured building components. The glulam instead of steel, or the cross-laminated timber, are innovative ways of dealing with it. It's kind of interesting that as we are embarking on trade restrictions regarding steel, that this building comes up, and there are attempts of bringing this type of manufacturing into California. I think at this moment it's only done in Washington State, if I have that correctly, and Oregon, but we are not quite yet engaged in it in California. But I think the skills are there, the materials are there, and I look forward for all of that to become a new way of becoming sustainable and finding more architectural solutions for the use of this material. Overall, I think the building is beautifully designed. It's a lovely complement to all of the new larger PDR institutional buildings in the district, and I couldn't be happier to support it. And I'm really jazzed by all of the comments my fellow commissioners have made so far.
Thanks. Commissioner Melgar.
I just wanted to point out that it's human-made, not SF-made. Human-made.
No, I said SF Made is the.
It's called, I believe it's human-made.
Yeah, but SF Made helped human-made to happen. Okay. That's what it is.
So I would like to make a motion that we approve items at 9A and B.
Second.
Commissioner Richards.
I'm just real quickly, I don't want to repeat what everybody else said. The issue with the sunlight, as I looked over on the maps and things, is 601 King Street's backyard, that green space, that the green space that would be shaded by the building?
As far as I know, I think that's part of their publicly accessible. It's part of their lot, that section of it. So it's like public open space.
Okay.
That's part of their.
Got it. Okay. And the other question is, on the cross-laminated timber, can it be used for housing?
That's a big question. I'm not sure if we have a good answer for you.
I hear people saying, "Hey, this is a solution. It's a good idea. Why don't we have projects that actually use it for housing to bring the cost down?"
Hi, Evan Jacob Fallong. Yes, it can be used for housing.
Okay, great.
The building code treats it like heavy timber, if that helps.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Fully supportive of the project.
I'm too. I just wanted to kind of force the comments on the architecture. It's a beautiful building in the rendering, so we hope it comes out like you rendered it, and build it like that, and don't engineer stuff out of it, because it's a great building. And it's one of. I'm looking forward to actually seeing it built. So thank you for this.
And just for clarity, Commissioner Melgar, your motion was to approve this matter with conditions as amended and read into the record by staff.
Thank you.
On that motion, Commissioner
Richards, hold on, Commissioner Richards.
Just one other question, Mr. Wu, as you were reading the condition around this, everybody supports this kind of language around a project contact. Why not just use the one that the neighborhood handed? I think there was some.
So as I mentioned, that was used in previous projects as two separate conditions, because the department already includes a standard boilerplate condition for a community liaison. And I just felt that it would be more appropriate to combine those into one condition, because they both refer to the community liaison officer.
Makes sense.
All right, Jonas.
Commissioners, there's a motion that has been seconded to approve these matters with conditions as amended and read into the record by staff. On that motion, Commissioner Fong?
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Koppel?
Aye.
Commissioner Moore?
Aye.
Commissioner Richards?
Aye.
Commissioner Melgar?
Aye.
And Commission President Hillis?
Aye.
So moved, Commissioners. That motion passes unanimously 7-0. Commissioners, that'll place us on item 10 for case number 2016-008651 ENX at 620th Street. This is for a large project authorization, and we did receive a request for organized opposition, which was granted.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Esmeralda Jardines, Planning Department staff. The item before you is a request of a large project authorization pursuant to Planning Code Sections 134, 140, and 329D11 to allow the demolition of the existing commercial building and permit the new construction of a 6-story, 68-foot tall residential building with ground floor commercial, and to grant exceptions to the requirements for rear yard dwelling unit exposure and to the accessory use provisions to dwelling units. 620th Street is within the Life Sciences and Medical Special Use District and within the Urban Mixed Use District. The project includes the demolition of the existing structure and the new construction of the residential building with approximately 26,024 gross square feet with 21 dwelling units. The project's dwelling unit mix consists of 10 two-bedroom units and 11 one-bedroom units. The project also includes 1,694 gross square feet of ground floor commercial use, 40 Class 1 bicycle parking spaces, and 4 Class 2 bicycle parking spaces. In addition, the project includes a total of 2,760 square feet of usable open space. The department has received correspondence from Newberry's neighbors regarding the proposed project. This correspondence has expressed opposition to the project, including concern over the loss of views from their roof deck of the adjacent building at 616 20th Street. Since the publication of this packet, additional correspondence has been submitted to the Planning Department in opposition to the proposed height, and those documents have been printed for the Commission. Since the project would construct more than 25,000 square feet within an urban Eastern Neighborhoods Mixed-Use District, the project requires the LPA from the Planning Commission and is seeking the aforementioned exceptions. The housing element of the general plan contains objectives that encourage identifying and making available for development adequate sites to meet the city's housing needs, especially permanent affordable housing. 620th Street has elected to provide its inclusionary housing on site and will be providing the required 3 units. The department recommends approval as the project is on balance, consistent with the general plan and the planning code requirements. The project complies with the applicable planning code areas. The project is consistent with the objectives and policies of the general plan. The project produces a new mixed-use development with ground floor commercial and residential above and includes significant site updates, including a restored curb cut, a new sidewalk, and additional landscaping, all which will support the pedestrian environment and improve the public realm. The project is consistent with and respects the varied neighborhood character and provides an appropriate massing and scale for the adjacent context. The project adds 21 new dwelling units into the city's housing stock, and the project will fully utilize the Eastern Neighborhoods Area Plan controls and will pay the appropriate development impact fees. This concludes staff presentation, but I am happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Project sponsor.
Good afternoon, President Hillis, Commissioners. Will Millard with Workshop 1, project sponsor. I'm joined by my colleague and architect, Mike Pittler. I'm going to walk you through our proposal for a mixed-use development at 620th Street in the Dog Patch. The proposed development involves demolition of an existing 2-story, 9,200 square foot commercial building and construction of a new 6-story, 26,000 square foot building featuring 21 residential units and 1,700 square feet of ground floor commercial space. The project site is located at the corner of 20th and Illinois, across the street from the American Industrial Center, at the entrance to Pier 70, just a few steps away from Crane Cove Park and the 3rd Street T-line. It's a corner parcel, 5,500 square foot in area. It's adjacent to a 5-story, 16-unit condominium building up 20th Street at 616 20th, completed in 2013, and backs up to the Potrero launch. It's a 200,000 square foot, 141 unit apartment building. Across the street is Building 101 at Pier 70. which is currently being renovated for, as a showroom for restoration hardware. This slide shows the existing building here in red from Illinois Street south of 20th. And here is the proposed building. The design draws upon a historic industrial character of its immediate context. Historic massing and fenestrations with modern interpretations was our main focus when designing the elevations of the building. Here you can see the historic American Industrial Center in the foreground has informed our 20th Street facade, mimicking the pilaster framed bay with horizontal sill below sill to ceiling windows. The building was also designed to have a strong base, middle, and top. At the top, you'll see we've added a cornice, a modern take on a historic element, and across the street is Building 101 with its own classical cornice. Here again, the existing building shown in red from up 20th Street, and the building as proposed. Here you can see our residential entry. Per code requirements, the ground floor is 17 feet in height as measured from the center of the building along 20th. Now up close. You can see the tall metal awning clearly announcing the location of the residential entry. Beyond that is the commercial space with large storefront glazing. The corner has been chamfered to better engage the public right-of-way. The entrance to the commercial space is located on Illinois Street. Accordingly, the commercial ceiling height is 18 feet due to the slope of our site. Here is a view of the around the corner on Illinois Street, just north of 20th, the existing building in red. You can see here the elevated code-complying rear yard. That's where those two people are standing. In the foreground, below the podium and rear yard, is a ground floor loft-style residential unit designated as a flexible occupancy for a potential small business use. And the Illinois residential facade features 4 bay window projections that have been detailed with metal frame that read like 2 volumes. Here you can see the residential exteriors in greater detail. On the left is the 20th Street facade, and on the right is the Illinois facade. Building materials consist of board-formed concrete, textured clay tile with a gray-blue finish, bird safety glazing, and perforated aluminum panel with clear finish. Here's the ground floor floor plan with residential areas shaded in blue. Adjacent to the building lobby is a residential amenity space, bike parking. As you can see, the project is car-free and promotes alternative transportation options. Accordingly, we've exceeded the code requirements for bicycle parking, having more 2-to-1 bike parking spaces to residential units. Along Illinois, you'll see the loft-style 1-bedroom flexible occupancy unit that has direct access to the street. The commercial space, shown here in red, is approximately 1,700 square feet. It is easily demisable into 2 spaces. And again, the entrance is on Illinois Street, which allows us to better utilize the wide sidewalk on the Illinois frontage for outdoor seating. This is the typical residential floor plan from the second floor. Each residential floor features 4 units comprised of 2 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms and 2 one-bedroom units. You can also see our code-complying rear yard, which aligns with the rear yard of the neighboring building at 616 20th. Here is the typical floor plan, which is floors 3 through 6. On these floors, we've added an additional bay window, 2 additional bay window projections over the rear yard. And then on the roof level, we're proposing a common landscape roof deck of approximately 1,700 square feet, oriented toward the Illinois Street side of the building. The elevator, stair, and mechanical penthouses are located in the center of the building and are set back from the street. The goal here has been to minimize the visibility from the street and the impacts on views to the adjacent building on 20th Street. We recognize that there are a number of homeowners from the building next door that have expressed concern about our impacts on the common roof deck. So I want to take just a moment to describe the issue and our efforts to accommodate. This is an elevation on 20th Street. As noted earlier, our building is 68 feet tall as measured from 20th Street, allowing for a code-compliant ground floor height of 17 feet. Our residential units have a modest 8-foot, 8-inch ceiling height. 616 20th Street was originally approved as 68 feet in height and 6 stories in 2009, but was eventually constructed in 2013 at 62 feet and 5 stories. As a result, our roof is approximately 2 feet 6 inches above their roof parapet wall. In order to minimize our impact on the views, we have eliminated the building cornice along half of the roof closest to their roof deck. You'll see it's on the right side of this Illinois Street front elevation. Additionally, we have proposed glass railings and have reduced the size of our roof deck, trying to locate most of it on the 20th Street side of the building. In summary, we're seeking your support for our project. It's a 6-story building of approximately 68 feet in height, 1,700 square feet of high-quality ground floor commercial space, 21 residential units, 48 of which are 2-bedroom family-size units, 3 on-site below-market rate inclusionary housing units, which is equal to 16%, 40 secure bike parking spaces, and a transit-first car-free project. We'll come back to that later. And with that, I conclude my comments.
All right,
Here
thank
for
you.
questions. Thank you.
So we'll recognize first the organized opposition. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Corinne David, and I speak as one of the homeowners of 616 20th Street. 3 of us are here today. We speak on the behalf of all 16. The project that has been proposed should be scaled down to the height of 62 feet, because at the proposed height of 6 plus extra feet, the project impact on the social life that builds up by the residents of 616 20th Street. The roof has become the social meet and comfort place that people go to get some fresh air, sun, talk to neighbor, have breakfast, children are playing. It has become the common room of the entire building. This project negatively impacts that and its benefits. The building should not be higher than the building that we reside in. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Hello. I'd like to share in the feeling around the proposed project, but I'd also like to say that it's a beautiful project, wonderful material, no pop colors, right? Beautiful materials, and I think a really exciting ground for retail space to come. So it's really a question of taking a good project to something that can be even better, where the roof deck of the proposed 620th Street would be in line with the roof deck of the 616 roof deck, where the neighbors can, in a sense, have even community across the parapet wall that'll end up existing. So it seems like, opportunity for improvement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is James Park, one of the owners at 616 20th Street, facing 20th Street. Along with Corinne and Amir, I just wanted to support their argument that I have a concern about the roof height, where it greatly reduces our visibility into the bay. And the roof deck is actually heavily used, and it's one of our very important common space for the community. Just wanted to raise that concern to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any additional public comment on this item?
Hello, Commissioners. I'm Nico Nagel, representing San Francisco Housing Action Coalition. I am here today to speak in support of this project. As the Evergreen comment goes, it is an improved use of the land because we are in a housing shortage. And in the context of a housing shortage, implementing housing wherever we can, especially at a design level that this project represents, is incredibly important. I also just want to commend the team at Workshop 1. They came back to us twice for our project review committee, even though the first time they had gained an endorsement, simply because they wanted to make sure they did this project right. Of note, they removed the parking, and doing so I think was appropriate since they are within a block of the T-line. They have worked well with the Dogpatch Neighborhood Association, and so we want to commend both organizations for having worked in that space. As Todd said earlier, we implore our business members to be active participants with the community. That's all I want to say. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Angelina Ma, representing San Francisco Housing Action Coalition in support of Workshop 1's project at 620th Street. We are excited to see that the project team managed to eliminate all parking from the project plan, as the site is well located a block from Muni's T-Line, a gateway to the heart of the city. This type of dense, well-located, and well-connected housing is the future of the city. So we implore the Commission to approve this project moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Commissioners? Commissioner Moore?
I believe that the project is appropriate in its setting and did not see any issues of why not to support it. So I move to approve with conditions.
Second.
Commissioner Richards?
Just one question about the neighboring building. It's a 5-story building, and the proposed buildings we're looking at is a 6-story building. So I guess question maybe to the architects from Shop 1. The 5-story building, was it just built is it also a 68-foot zone? And so it was just built with 5 stories? I mean...
Correct, Commissioners. 616 20th Street is also within the 68X height and bulk district, as is the building immediately to the north, which is actually a 6-story building.
Okay.
Built, entitled and built at 68 feet.
Got it. Thank you. I mean, I feel where you're coming from in terms of what you potentially might be losing if the other building wasn't at the same level as your building, but it is a 68-foot zone. Your building could have been at 68 feet and you would have had your matching roof decks, but for some reason your building wasn't built to the full extent that it was allowed. So I don't think we really have any reason or right to penalize or take away units or height on the building because it is code compliant. So I will support the project.
If there's nothing further, Commissioners, there's a motion that has been seconded to approve this project with conditions on that motion. Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Koppel?
Aye.
Commissioner Moore?
Aye.
Commissioner Richards?
Aye.
Commissioner Melgar?
Aye.
And Commission President Hillis?
Aye.
So moved, Commissioners. That motion passes unanimously 6-0. Commissioners, item 11 was continued to August 30th, placing us on item 12 for case number 2018-004191 PCA for hotel uses in North Beach. This is a planning code amendment.
So I'm going to skip this number 11.
Item 11 was continued at the beginning of the hearing to August 30th.
So we're not going to hear it today. We'll hear it August 30th. So we're on item 12. Do we have commissions? Do we have planning staff here for 12?
I don't see him. Do you want to go with the next one and then?
Let's take a 5-minute break. All right, we'll be back in 5 minutes.
SF Gov TV, San Francisco Government Television.
Okay, good afternoon and welcome back to the San Francisco Planning Commission regular hearing for Thursday, June 14th, 2018. Commissioners, we left off on your regular calendar and we will be taking item 13 out of order for case number 2018-006286 PCA to prohibit cannabis retail and medical cannabis dispensaries in Chinatown. This is a planning code amendment.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, Aaron Starr, Department staff. This item before you is an ordinance sponsored by Supervisor Peskin that would amend the planning code.
1 second. That SFGTV says item 12.
This is item 13, SF. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you.
That would amend the planning code to prohibit cannabis retail and medical cannabis dispensaries in the 3 Chinatown mixed-use districts. As I'm sure you all remember, this commission heard and passed comprehensive cannabis legislation late last year, and the final ordinance was passed by the board in December and became effective in January of this year. That ordinance set universal standards for every neighbor commercial district and Chinatown district, including standard distances from schools and other cannabis retail businesses and standard approval process. Since the law became effective, no new cannabis retailers have been approved, and no existing MCDs have yet converted to be a permanent cannabis retailer. The Office of Cannabis has received over 30 equity applicants for cannabis retail, none of which are proposed in Chinatown. The Planning Department is recommending approval with modifications. The modification would be to put a 2-year sunset provision on the prohibition so that it may be reevaluated once the existing regulations have had time to take effect and to assess their effectiveness. That concludes my presentation. Lee Hepner is not here yet, but he'll be here shortly.
All right, while we await Mr. Hepner, let's open it up for public comment, if there is any on this item. Mr. Al? How are you?
I expect lots of people, and I heard that there's a rally earlier at 12 o'clock that is no marijuana shop in Chinatown. This is the subject we are talking about, right?
Correct.
Well, I'm based on Supervisor Peskin resolution that no marijuana in Chinatown forever. And, he spoke all over Chinatown and most of the Chinese community. And according to the newspaper, they're supposed to be here, but I don't see them. And the whole Chinatown, I'm a resident there for a long, long time, over 70 years. And I sit in the park and I drink coffee, I have lunch with lots of people. And this is what we don't want. Chinatown's really congested. There are 3 generations living in a small room. Grandfather, father, and then children. And the secondhand smoke really hurts everybody. And there's a report published by our health department a few months ago, and it really hurts the secondhand smoke, the development of a child. So I urge you, not only 2-year study, and we have studied for a long, long time. Marijuana is not good for human body in any age, any condition. So I urge your commission really go slowly and really respect the neighbors that live in that neighborhood, that they don't want any marijuana shop to open there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment on this item?
Good afternoon, Commissioner. My name is Wendy Wong. I live in Sunset area, and I understand that there is a proposal from the Planning Department staff that the prohibition of marijuana in Chinatown for 2 years. This is very interesting period of time, 2 years. Is it the 1.5-year mayor election over, that we have to go back to the community to get the votes again? On the other hand, I wonder if Planning Commission staff has the authority to recommend 2 years restriction of marijuana in Chinatown. And I wonder if other department, which is land use committee, is giving the input and feedback for the planning department staff. Is it power abusive? I would like to see if the neighbors are detesting the existing of marijuana in Chinatown. This is only several blocks area, and it's very congregate with family, children, and elderly. We can say all day long marijuana doesn't have any effect on impaired driving. We can say all day long that marijuana doesn't hurt, doesn't affect your comprehensive of handling your behavior. But as you see, 880 car accident, the people who approve the recreational of marijuana have bloods in their hand. And Chinatown is a historical place. It's the biggest community, Chinese community in America. Each community deserves their uniqueness, that they do not need to attract tourists buying marijuana in any perspective, in boba drink, in tea. I would like the commissioner to think it's harder. If each community is the same, why do we have our own personality? Is the democracy still working in San Francisco? Are we still hearing the neighbor's voice? Does the voice of the people still matter? I understand we have a lot of people who are working today. They may not know what's going on. My question is really the planning department staff, whether they have the authority to do so. Please think deeper. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Any additional public comment on this item? Mr. Hapner, would you like to apologize?
Thank you, Commissioners. Commission President Hillis, Lee Hepner from Supervisor Peskin's office. I want to be sort of brief on this item because I think it does sort of speak for itself, but two rationales that I want to touch on out of our office for putting this forward at all and putting this forward now. The first, as this commission knows, just about San Francisco's Chinatown. It's the oldest, second largest Chinatown in the entire United States. It's one of the densest neighborhoods in the city, housing where 2/3 of its residents live in often multi-generational scenarios in SRO occupancies. At the core of the Chinatown area plan are incentives to further this neighborhood's function as a center of civic, religious, and political organization. And largely due to the tight community bonds in Chinatown and the policies that have emanated out of City Hall in response to the community bonds in that neighborhood, the Chinatown has largely resisted some of the ongoing pressures of whether it's office space or co-working space or some of the other increasingly well-capitalized uses that threaten some of the more small grain, ground floor community-oriented uses and the uses that really kind of make Chinatown what it is. There's a lot of uncertainty around how cannabis retail is going to play out in San Francisco. I think that there's a lot of policy in place to allow this to develop organically, but we've seen in other areas that have legalized cannabis in this way, namely cities like Denver, Seattle, and Portland, that this use has a desire and a financial backing to grow rather rapidly. And in these cities, the commercial rent prices have ballooned at a faster rate than they have in other major metropolises throughout the United States. And we can learn from that and start putting in place some measured controls to protect at least our most vulnerable communities. And that's what this is about today, is an economic barrier between this extraordinarily well-capitalized use and a neighborhood that, for multiple reasons, not the least of which is the creation of the Chinatown Central Subway Station, is in a very fragile economic place right now. We just got a call from a business a few weeks ago, one of our legacy businesses on Stockton Street, adjacent to the new Central Subway Station, is facing a 200% rent increase and is either going to have to renegotiate that, relocate, or shut down business altogether altogether. Each loss of a business like that is a hole in the fabric of Chinatown. And frankly, it behooves us to try to protect this neighborhood from uses that we've seen in other municipalities grow really rapidly and drive spikes in commercial rent prices. The other rationale that is obviously in the room and has been since this was brought up last year is the unique cultural concerns of the Chinatown community. I am not the best representative or the voice for those concerns, but I do want to say why, and frankly, you have a letter from the Community Tenants Association in the file. Some of those concerns are enumerated a little bit more eloquently in the findings of the legislation. But I do want to talk about why we're doing this now. I think that in the context of last year's broader legislation to legalize the recreation, manufacturing, production, sale of recreational and medicinal cannabis in San Francisco, it was perceived by a lot of actually well-intentioned advocates that carving out a neighborhood like Chinatown would threaten the entire legislation, or that it would balloon in various ways to different neighborhoods, and other neighborhoods would start asking for carve-outs. And it was just not the right time to have a measured conversation for Supervisor Peskin to really meet that threshold burden of justifying, hey, this is why Chinatown is a little bit different, or this is why we need to take a little bit of time and have a deep breath and consider why this might be right for Chinatown. Frankly, in that process, those types of concerns, the concerns of the Chinatown community, were glazed over, they were rushed over, they were, in fact, somewhat crudely brushed over and boiled down to a really kind of base level that didn't really reflect the complexities of the issue to the Chinatown community. And I hope that this opportunity, moving the legislation at this time, provides a little bit more time for that discourse to take place among this commission, certainly among the Board of Supervisors when it comes before us. So for those two reasons, this is a discrete piece of legislation before you, to the auspice that this might balloon into, other supervisors preventing their own types of carve-outs. I know that there was the prospect in the Sunset in parts of District 11. I really think that every supervisor is going to have to take this on and meet that threshold burden of why this is important for their neighborhood. I think it makes more sense as a piecemeal conversation in the wake of what was really an extraordinary effort by so many departments of the city to pass comprehensive legislation around the sale, manufacturing, delivery, production of cannabis last year. I want to thank planning staff for its support of this item. We do oppose the 2-year sunset on it, if only because I think it has the potential unintended consequence of driving vacancies in spots that are just waiting for this ban to lift. If for some reason access proves to be a particular hindrance in Chinatown, I happen to think, from what I know about the prevalence of delivery services and emerging retail storefronts in District 3 already, that access is not going to be an issue for anybody living in Chinatown. But should that drive a reconsideration of this, I'd rather do it legislatively than wait around and see whether we're unintentionally causing a vacancy problem in San Francisco, or potential loss of unique businesses in that neighborhood. Thank you, commissioners, and I'm around if you have any questions.
All right, thank you. So I think we've closed public comment. Commissioner Moore?
I support the legislation, and reason why: I live 2 blocks off Chinatown, and I very much appreciate Mr. Heppner's short synopsis of the essence of Chinatown, at least from what it is, where it is located, surrounded 360 degrees by other communities, and leaving it at this moment functioning with its own dynamics and with its own ways to restrict MCD. This is a small area, relatively speaking. There's a lot of hinterland with already 4 additional MCD allocations pending in the neighborhood. There's a walkable neighborhood in all directions, and there is no need for a sunset, because I do think it will all work itself out on its own. 2 years is barely enough to get the legislation approved, and let things settle and let Chinatown take its own voice at the time when they feel differently about it. I am not prepared to shove it down this road, and I do not support the 2-year sunset at this moment. I believe the community has been clear, and I do believe that the supervisor at this moment has better handle on what is needed and supportive of the dynamics of the community. I am very concerned, and I know that Commissioner Richards feels the same way, that any of these uses, not particularly focused on MCD, have the speculative aspect of higher rents, leave things vacant till I find a higher and better buyer, and I cannot support that. So for that reason, I am supporting the legislation without sunset.
Commissioner Melgar.
So this is a difficult one for me, but I'm gonna just. I do not support this legislation, and I've spoken to Mr. Hepner about this. I profoundly disagree with this approach. I think that it is exactly the opposite, having it piecemeal and having each supervisor, protect their own. I do think that all of the things that you articulated are things I agree with. I am concerned, particularly about the effect this nascent industry is going to have on commercial rents, not just in Chinatown, in the Mission, on Divisadero, 3rd Street, the Fillmore. I mean, there are many places around town that are seeing gentrification and displacement, that are seeing empty storefronts because of the speculative nature of what's to come, this being one of them. I also have heard from the Chinese community, not just in Chinatown, but in the Sunset, on 3rd Street, in San Bruno. And I am worried that doing this piecemeal approach will just cause more speculation in areas that don't have control. And I think that would be supporting this legislation for me would be counter to everything that I've said while I've been on this commission, which is that I think that we need to have social justice and equity with this particular industry across all land uses in San Francisco. I think that some communities have more political power than others, and I am afraid of what we're creating by setting this precedent. So as it is, I'm sorry, I just cannot support this legislation, even though I understand the concerns, the issues that have been raised, and agree with them. I want to help, with that, but not in this way.
Commissioner Koppel.
Yeah, I have somewhat similar comments. If this was a ban on retail dispensaries, I would be all for it. I've got to stick with how I've looked at these items in the past, and have mainly looked at the medicinal uses for the cannabis. I've voted for them in Excelsior. I voted for them in my neighborhood. I've typically supported them, and I mainly supported the medicinal use. I don't think we've even heard a retail dispensary here. So I think there's a very strong difference between those two. And again, when it comes to equity, I cannot vote and single out certain neighborhoods, even though I'm very clear on what would happen if a dispensary was proposed in this neighborhood. And not to say I would automatically vote a certain way if it was, but just so I can feel like I'm doing what I know I need to do, I'm not going to be in support of the ban today.
Commissioner Richards.
So, along with Commissioner Koppel, I've supported MCDs, I think, pretty much everywhere, except I did vote against one on, I think it was Irving, because, or the Apothecarium on the Sunset, because it was before we actually knew what the impact of retail was going to be. We had no idea even what the rules were going to be, so I didn't want to vote on that. I thought it was too soon. That all being said, I'm a strong cannabis supporter, but I'm also a strong neighborhood supporter. I think it would be, if anybody wanted to open up a cannabis dispensary in Chinatown, NCD would be crazy, because we'd need a conditional use, we'd have 1,000 people here, and it would be marathon hearings. Clearly the community has spoken that they do not want cannabis in their neighborhood, and I would respect that. And I actually would respect the fact that let's just do it once and for all. Let's not have a wait period. Wait periods only, I believe, can actually only compound the problem. I ran into a cannabis applicant and a cannabis MCD owner last night at the Council of District Merchants dinner gala event. and that individual told me about the speculation that is going on in rents, and he mentioned some of the rents that people were paying for vacant places, and my jaw dropped. I couldn't believe the speculation and the amount of money that retail spaces are getting that are just sitting there empty, waiting for their turn to actually get an application in and get approved. That's how much. And I think it's actually in my neighborhood. I think there's spaces I know that are sitting there for speculation, and it's starting to ruin portions of the neighborhood. So I absolutely, I'm pro-cannabis, but I'm pro-community. I'm going to support the ban outright.
So I appreciate your comments, Mr. Hebner. I think you're all grappling with some of the same issues we are on this. I mean, we've certainly voted. I think I have voted against and for MCDs as we've seen them, mostly for. But I think I get the issues of neighborhoods who don't want them as well as neighborhoods who don't want more. And I think but I guess my issue is I think we somewhat address that with the CU process, and it makes me nervous. I agree with Commissioner Melgar's comments to start banning the use in places. I think it speaks loudly that we don't have any applications from Chinatown before us currently or before the commission, and I'd hazard a guess that we won't see them anytime soon. We probably won't see more in other neighborhoods where we've had kind of big neighborhood outcry in battles between them. But I think the ban to me just goes too far. I think the CU process, like it works well in formula retail, I think would work well here. I think it's a big deterrent for cannabis retailers as well as MCDs to open. I'd support converting the medical cannabis, which I think is now a mandatory DR, to a CU in Chinatown to have kind of that extra layer of protection. But we've had fights on Lombard Street in Pacific Heights. We had a fight in Fisherman's Wharf about one. I think we denied in Terraval, certainly. And I think the same claims could be made that we probably should ban them because there's neighbors in neighborhoods that are against them there also. But I just think that's not the right way to go. I'm concerned about too many in my neighborhood. Around Upper Haight in Divisadero, there's some. I certainly don't want my kids walking by tons of them. But I think we've struck a balance with the CU and kind of the clustering provisions we put in. So, I mean, I like where planning went with the kind of sunset in 2 years, and we take a look at it. Certainly, I think I've been surprised by kind of the relatively low impact that the existing MCDs that have converted to recreational or adult use have had in the one in my neighborhood. It's really no additional impact from that. So I also can't support the legislation as proposed. Commissioner Fong.
Yeah, I'm likely not to be supportive as well, and I think that as much energy that went into the legislation citywide and the efforts to try to make it equitable geographically and by different neighborhoods, isolating out one now only pushes it, to your point, Commissioner Mulgar, pushes it to other neighborhoods and puts a premium on other neighborhoods. And I think that was the whole point of the whole legislation that we were trying to get at, to make it spread it around town fairly rather than concentrate it. So, but I understand the desires of Chinatown and the community, and very well understand and that message I think was delivered loud and clear on some other ones that were brought to us, and the community was strongly opposed to them. We pushed back on some of them. So I think the process as it stands now works with the CU. We will have the opportunity to deny them if it's in the wrong location. And so I would prefer to test out that process that people spend a lot of time with for 2 years or so. And if that doesn't work, then maybe certain areas need to be banned. But understand the efforts and understand the concerns of the community.
Any further discussion or a motion?
Okay.
Commissioner Melgar?
So I'd like to make a motion that we disapprove this legislation.
So we're recommending disapproval.
Yes.
Second.
Very good, Commissioners. Then on that motion, you actually do disapprove and approve planning code amendments.
But the board
That's the
ultimately
action.
will hear it.
They will ultimately hear it, but the
Yeah.
action in the charter actually gives you that approval and disapproval
Okay.
authority. So on that motion, Commissioners, to disapprove the proposed planning code amendment, Commissioner Fong?
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Koppel? Aye. Commissioner Moore?
No.
Commissioner Richards?
No.
Commissioner Melgar?
Aye.
And Commission President Hillis?
Aye.
So moved, Commissioners. That motion passes 5-2 with Commissioners Moore and Richards voting against. Commissioners, if we could jump very quickly to your discretionary review calendar, item 14, we have just received from the project sponsor a email withdrawing his building permit application for this
Okay.
project. But because you've heard it and you've closed public comment, just because the project sponsor decides to withdraw their building permit application does not mean that it automatically is withdrawn, and you still have the opportunity to render a decision on this matter. And so I guess at this point, my question is, if there is not a desire to render a decision, we can simply, through consensus, allow the project sponsor to withdraw, or we can hear it under your discretionary review
Well,
calendar.
we would have to take some action, right? It's on our calendar.
You could just simply acknowledge the withdrawal of
Recognize
the
the
applicant.
withdrawal.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that without any further process, based on the Planning Commission's perspective, that
Right.
permit would become moot.
Okay. Commissioner Richards?
So if the project sponsor next week pulled another permit, could they?
Well,
I'd rather just disapprove it so that at least a year would go by. Oh, okay.
They would
I mean,
go
maybe
through the same
condition
process.
we recognize withdrawal, but if a permit comes, if a similar permit is pulled,
right.
we would ask the staff to initiate DR.
Sure, certainly. I think staff would be aware that
Okay.
a project at this address would trigger alarms.
So can we recognize the withdrawal and just direct staff to initiate a DR if the same permit is pulled?
Very good, Commissioners.
Yeah, 14, yeah.
Then item 14 has been withdrawn with the stipulation from the Planning Commission to staff. Commissioners, that'll place us on item 12 for case number 2018-004191 PCA for hotel uses in North Beach. This is a planning code amendment.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Diego Sanchez with Planning Department staff. Today, I'll be presenting an ordinance to amend the Planning Code to prohibit hotel uses in the North Beach Neighborhood Commercial District and the Telegraph Hill North Beach Residential Special Use District. Before I begin my presentation, I'd like to provide Lee Hepner of Supervisor Peskin's office with time to present to you.
All right, Mr. Hepner.
Hello, Commissioners. Again, Lee Hepner from Supervisor Peskin's office. I'm happy to be here on a roll, I hope. The legislation before you, of course, would limit hotel uses in the Telegraph Hill North Beach Residential Special Use District and the North Beach Neighborhood Commercial District. Those are almost contiguous zoning districts. Telegraph Hill North Beach Residential Special Use District being a little bit larger. And North Beach, just crossing Columbus a little bit. Just a word about District 3 at large. We are, sort of by unanimous accord, the primary destination for tourists in the city and county of San Francisco. It bears out in the numbers. According to the city's annual inventory of large hotels in San Francisco, the last one was done in 2011. I don't know why it did not continue. But 86 of the city's 92 large hotels were within District 3. And if you break that down by number of hotel rooms, that is 26,903 hotel rooms already in District 3. That's over 96% of the total number of hotel rooms, at least based on that large hotel metric. By contrast, within the subject SUD and NCD, that is before us today, there are no more than a few small inns, B&B type situations. So while the North Beach neighborhood is undoubtedly a popular tourist destination, it's actually rather well served by hotels in the adjacent hotel-rich neighborhoods, Fisherman's Wharf, Union Square, Nob Hill, et cetera. long and short, we understand that tourism is intrinsic to District 3. Supervisor Peskin, over his, going on 20 years of representing this district, has been a champion for the hotel industry and a champion of the tourist industry. He's been a champion of the workers in both of those industries. And it is with that foundation that we are nevertheless proposing this prohibition on new hotel uses within the Telegraph Hill North Beach Residential SUD and North Beach NCD today. As this commission knows by now, Supervisor Peskin is a big fan of using these zoning districts and zoning tables to provide incentives and disincentives for various uses within the city's zoning districts. And frankly, the driving force behind this legislation is our desire to incentivize new residential uses within the boundaries of the residential SUD within the NCD, and to preserve existing residential housing stock, prevent its conversion from residential to any non-residential use, and to really concentrate on the very few sites within the SUD and the NCD for development of more residential housing, more affordable housing in this dense area. Relative to planning staff's two recommendations, I think I'll address them out of order. The first was to exempt certain C2 sites within the SUD from applicability of this legislation. In talking to Supervisor Peskin about this, he reiterated the point that Bay Street line, which separates the SUD to the south and Fisherman's Wharf to the north, is not just an arbitrary barrier. In fact, the uses that you see below Bay Street are far different than the uses that you see above Bay Street. To the south of Bay Street, we of course have Kaiming Head Start. We have North Point Public Housing, the rather large Bay Stockton apartment complex, and otherwise, I think there's a Trader Joe's there, but otherwise the C2 parcels in the SUD consist largely of parking garages and office space along the waterfront. In fact, one of the reasons for creating the SUD was to incentivize residential use and disincentivize the creation of new garages in housing that would cause it to be a little bit higher price point, and to preserve the existing affordable housing stock in the SUD. As to the other recommendation, I hope planning staff can illustrate a little bit more. I'm not really sure I understand the purpose of limiting it to under 5 units. I can't imagine a scenario where we would be okay with the conversion of a residential 5-unit building to a hotel use. Particularly if it's a 5-unit residential building, it seems to me that is precisely the type of housing that we want to preserve in the SUD and in the NCD. And otherwise, I don't think I have a very good sense of what the impact of that recommendation would be, and would rather stick to our goal of incentivizing residential uses and new housing in the SUD and NCD. That's it. Thank you, commissioners. I'll be around.
All right, thanks.
Commissioners, the department supports the intentions of this ordinance to moderate the effect of hotel uses on residential uses and other uses in the area. Obviously, assuring compatibility of uses is an important function of land use planning. As mentioned, though, we do believe that the area zoned C2 should still allow hotel uses. These are areas typically near places of interest. In addition, past planning efforts have indicated that these areas are suitable for hotels. The department also understands the concern about hotel development within the North Beach NCD. We are proposing to limit hotel uses to 5 guest rooms or less as a means to adopt a residential control onto the NCD in deference to the supervisor's ordinance. We're also trying to strike a balance between neighborhood serving uses and tourist-oriented uses. So that was the thinking. We weren't envisioning converting residential units to hotel uses. Obviously, that type of application, I believe, would come before you in a conditional use authorization request. And given this housing crisis, I'm not sure we would support that, but we would look at that on a case-by-case basis. In any case, those are the 2 recommendations, and this concludes my presentation. Here for additional questions. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Any public comment on this item?
Yes, hello. Nice to see you today. Stan Hayes, the Telegraph Hill Dwellers. I learned once again today how important it is to actually come to a meeting early enough to find out that the item you came to speak on was continued. So I had a great speech on item 11. Some other day we'll talk about that. And I don't have anything here other than an off-the-cuff reaction to this. I think Telegraph Hill, particularly North Beach, is a fragile ecosystem. We're always trying to find ways to balance balanced residence versus tourist-oriented, balanced bars versus restaurants, trying to keep that special sweet spot that has worked for us for so long. And I think one of the things we're worried about is that as we begin to think about the possibility of there being hotels, even small hotels like could occur should this in modified form be adopted. We're worried that we're going to see the balance that we have been fortunate enough to have for so long begin to slip away. So I think that's why we support, for all the reasons that Mr. Heppner said so well, we would support the amendments as they were originally crafted and not with the exception for the hotels. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hayes. Any additional public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Commissioner Fong.
Well, I'm sorry these two items have come up sort of back to back, and I'm unfortunately not supportive of them. I absolutely understand, and I think Mr. Heppner made it very clear that North Beach is one of, or top 3 touristic destinations in San Francisco. And for that very reason, I think hotels should be in top destinations in San Francisco. I think maybe the real objective, if I can, the real objective is to prevent housing stock getting turned into hotel. And if that's the objective, I think you should be very specific about that and say, hey, we're going to ban residential units or buildings or structures to becoming hotels or to avoid them to becoming Airbnb units. But I think while it's a very small subset of area, and I'm very curious specifically the China Live building on Broadway, which fits into this area. I'm not sure if it fits in the NC district or not. But if China Live wasn't China Live, and it's a very large building, it's not in it? Okay. It's outside of it? It's on that side of Broadway, the north side of Broadway?
China Live is on the northwest side of Broadway between, I believe, Columbus and Stockton. And if that's the case, then China Live is not within the SUD or the NCD.
Okay. So take a building, just for example, and sorry to bring that one up, but a building of that type that is not residential, it's double-sized lot, it's 4 stories tall. It would have made a perfect hotel. In fact, the hotel across the street that the Royal Pacific my grandfather built, developed in the 1950s. So, and Broadway would have been a good example. So I just don't think putting a blanket no hotels in North Beach or no hotels in Chinatown or no hotels anywhere else is a good idea when we're in a tourist city and tourism supports San Francisco. And again, I'm sorry, and I'm sure Supervisor Peskin is watching this, and I apologize for these 2 items and being not supportive of them. But if there's a real specific need for this, and maybe that's, again, repeating myself because I think it's important to protect and prevent housing stock from being turned in hotels, let's really specifically call that out.
Commissioner Richards.
I recall the fight we had on was it Moxie Hotel on Columbus, where we had the old Tower Records store that we felt should have been developed into housing versus a hotel use. And I think that's where half of this legislation is going, and I do support that. I think allowing 5 units or less is an interesting kind of compromise, but do we have a lot of B&B applications that come in for 5 units or less? 5 hotel rooms or less? Do they require a CU?
All hotels in San Francisco require conditional use authorization.
No matter what size. Interesting.
Yep.
I think we've seen in the past, like new residential projects that sometimes have hotel room components that may fall into this 5 unit, but I think that's the only thing I can think of that may, that would be that small.
Didn't we approve a hotel in the C2 district recently?
C3?
Within this area, down near the Trader Joe's?
Moxie was...
that was on Columbus, but I thought we approved one, maybe it was like 20 unit down near the Trader Joe's.
You did. It was Ginsberg's Pub formerly Ginsberg's Pub on Bay and Mason. But it was actually too small and has not been built, and didn't support an elevator shaft and stairwell and such. But
okay, that would not have been inside this area.
I don't think so.
Okay, I mean, I get where the legislation's going, and I'm generally pro free market as you are. However, neighborhood serving versus tourist serving is a delicate balance, and that balance needs to be struck somehow. And if 96% of the hotel rooms are already in District 3, and you want to carve out a small portion of it, I don't have any issues with it.
Commissioner Moore.
I'm supportive of the legislation as it stands, again, surrounded on 360 on all sides by districts and streets that can afford hotel development. The south side of the north side of Beach Street or the far side of Broadway. I believe that North Beach offers just the variety of a walkable district that is interested for tourists to walk through rather than needing additional manifestations of hotels. We have several hotels in the thing. They are not in question. What we have is protected and remains. However, I would be very cautious to introduce others because most hotels operate at larger scales that would be, I think, disruptive to this particular area. So I'm in support of the legislation without modification and move to approve.
Second.
Commissioner Koppel.
There was a span of time where we saw a lot of projects in front of us that we thought were going to be turned into Airbnb little party pads. And so I was supportive of the hotel application on Columbus. Not to say that the first round of the hotel we saw was approvable. It did need some whittling down into what could have been maybe doable in the area. Again, I don't know if a blanket ban is the way to go, and believe it or not, I'm looking at this in efforts to protect the actual residents and the housing stock from having the housing that's there be compromised into potential rentals, where people might be able to just stay in a small, code compliant hotel.
Just a question on the parcels on our map we have in our packet, the parcels north of Broadway.
Yeah, those are
They're
in
gray. What are they? Are those? Yeah, but those aren't P, right?
Did get colored in.
Are those C2?
It's entertainment.
There.
Yeah.
Those are in the Broadway neighborhood commercial district, which isn't called out, but it falls within the Telegraph Hill North Beach residential special use district.
So to Commissioner Fong's point earlier, could you do a hotel then in that area? Because
Today with conditional use under certain parameters, but under this ordinance, no, because it's within the Telegraph Hill North Beach residential special use district. So
anything in the red line is included in this ordinance.
What's the zoning there now?
Broadway Neighbor Commercial District. It's just
it's
the
got its
color
own
wasn't
zoning.
highlighted.
Got it.
Sorry about that.
Okay. I mean, I would support staff. I mean, I get the impact of hotels, but I also weigh why are we kind of I don't think is there anything brewing about a hotel in this neighborhood at this point?
we checked the pipeline and there was nothing.
Right.
Yeah, we think all the hotels are happening on Market or slightly north or south adjacent to Market.
Yeah. So a little bit is, I don't know what's out there that's necessarily causing this. I also voted for the hotel project that we had because I thought that was a reasonable location. I mean, I think this is a land use issue and where should hotels be and where shouldn't they be, and they probably shouldn't be in core neighborhood commercial areas, in residential areas. But I think planning's recommendation of allowing them in the C2, and I would even carve out the area just on the north side of Broadway as a place to allow them, I think is appropriate. So I would support this with staff's recommendation. I'm not sure we'd ever see the 5-unit project, but kind of carving out the C2, and I'd extend that to the area north of Broadway, because that is a kind of a major corridor that we do have hotels on. Currently on the south side that I think could be, I think from a land use perspective, it's appropriate to have a hotel. It could be appropriate to have a hotel on that site. Commissioner Richards.
Just one question on the North Beach residential SUD. There were some objectives mentioned in the motion, et cetera, but the reason why the SUD was created in the first place was, can somebody fill me in? I mean, how long ago, and What was the nexus or the genesis of it?
I'm not entirely sure how long ago, but the purpose of the Telegraph Hill North Beach residential SUD in section 249.49 is pretty concise. It is to preserve existing affordable housing and prevent the creation of new garages in new housing in order to preserve the existing affordable housing stock. So it was, kind of designed around preserving the existing affordable housing.
Got it.
And just while I'm up here, if I may, to Commissioner Fong's point, I mean, separate from the rationale about existing residents and converting those uses to non-residential use, the other goal, which I hope came out in my original speech, is identifying the possible sites for new development in the district and really prioritizing residential use for those new developments. It's not just about the conversion, but prioritizing that use for new development.
Just a clarifying question. In the RH districts, you can't get a CU for a hotel, right? Or
You can, but it's more like a bed and breakfast type use that you can do.
Yeah. Okay. Commissioner Johnson.
So it is really interesting that these two have, the last two items have been next to each other. Just looking at one, how do you protect the character of a neighborhood and find a balance? And, I think on this one in particular, and in both of them, frankly, I hear the concerns around community protection. And I think it's a really interesting point that you just brought up about prioritizing the use that ultimately gets approved. And that's something that we are all kind of like-minded in looking at as well. We want more housing. And I think the approval of housing can be done through working with community groups, working with offices, and working with us. And so I just have a question about, again, whether the legislation as is truly gets to the heart of, I think, some of the goals that you've laid out, and making sure that there is a balance, making sure that we're prioritizing housing production, while recognizing that it's the wonderful thing about North Beach is that it is this place that people come to be able to experience the beauty of San Francisco. Just a statement. But you can respond. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, just briefly. I mean, I would go back to the rationale that we've used for tweaking zoning tables in this way in the past. And really, there are no hotels in this area. There are a few very small inns. And it is a tourist destination. And in as much as there aren't any big hotels in this area right now, we are crafting an amendment to the zoning table that matches reality, matches the priorities that this commission and the city have prioritized in the past. We're just kind of making it clear that this is what we don't want done with the SUD. So, and to the extent that North Beach is a tourist destination, absolutely it is a tourist destination. It is abundantly well served by the 26,000 existing hotel rooms in the district that are maybe not directly in the boundaries of the SUD, which is predominantly a residential community serving, part of town, but extraordinarily well served by the 26,000 beds that are either in Union Square or Fisherman's Wharf or Nob Hill, just adjacent walking distance to North Beach.
Mr. Hebner, if I could ask you, because we had this, it was interesting, we had this item before that's similar, but so why is North Beach different than, the Mission? So there's a lot of people now who come to the city and go to the Mission. A hotel would need a CU there. Tell us why North Beach is distinct in this case to have a ban.
Right.
Versus other areas of the cities that are growing in popularity. Granted, they're not as popular probably with tourists as North Beach, Fisherman's Wharf, where there is a big hotel infrastructure, but maybe help us make that distinction.
Yeah, and I think the most simple way that I can make that distinction is that Supervisor Peskin is the supervisor of District 3, and he is a fan of using zoning tables in these ways. You know, he's created SUDs and NCDs and CTDs in the past in order to prioritize, you know, existing uses and match the nature of the, you know, what we see in reality to the planning code. You know, maybe District 9 should think about this or wants to think about this. I have no idea. I really, you know, have my focus is on, you know, our district, and that is Supervisor Peskin's focus as well.
I mean, what I would see is it is adjacent to areas. I mean, this neighborhood's, you know, tourist oriented, and there's a lot of tourists, but it's also adjacent to very heavily concentrated tourist areas. So I'd say that would be the rationale in my mind, if there is one, to kind of ban them here and not elsewhere in the city. Is just the pressure probably is greater in North Beach because it's where it is and adjacent to kind of areas.
Sure, and to staff's representation, you know, there's nothing in the pipeline right now. There may be ideas bubbling, but you know, this is not staving off a threat. This is really matching the code to reality for us. And in as much as it's well served by adjacent hotels and is remained a very vibrant tourist destination, District 3 is extraordinarily rich. 96% of the hotels in the city are in District 3. You know, I think that, you know, we can do this and it not be the end of the world for anybody. But that's our perspective, of course.
Commissioner Richards.
I think the reason why North Beach is so attractive to tourists is that it is neighborhood serving. It's like walking into some other place that you can't get anywhere else. It's really unique. And you know, the Castro is a tourist destination too, and there are what I call schlocky shops there that tourists go and they have stuff in the window. In the 25 years that I've lived here, I've never walked into them because I'm not a tourist in my own neighborhood, but I see why they're there. I think if, you know, God forbid North Beach gets those kind of stores there and it starts losing some of its luster as that unique place, I can see that's where this, I think, really goes, what it hits to. The Mission, I think if we had a big hotel project on Mission Street, we'd have pitchforks and knives and people coming out and saying you're gentrifying the neighborhood. So perhaps Supervisor Ronan can think about a ban on Mission Street if she wants, you know. But we're dealing with North Beach, it's unique. The Mission is unique. I still support the legislation as is.
Commissioner Moore.
I do think we need to add a comment here that hotels are a higher and better use in comparison to the ones whose place they would like to take. We also see a trend of large hotel chains breaking into the smaller subsidiary type of still formulaic hotel creations that are just looming out there to find another place to nest themselves. I do think that the description of the neighborhood as being uniquely mixed use without hotels, it's kind of almost like going to Italy and having like a little part of how Italy functions. And I believe that the presence of as many hotel rooms as Mr. Heppner said is plenty to support the viable tourist industry, particularly these larger hotels, including those at the edge of Fisherman's Wharf, bordering the district, are enough to act like anchors for people walking to one end to another and still kind of knowing where they are and where they're going. So I just in support of, as the legislation as it stands, would urge us to support it and not open it up to hotel development in the district.
Commissioners, there is a motion that has been seconded, and unless there's anything further, shall I call that question? On that motion, Commissioners,
I'm sorry, could you repeat the motion?
The motion was to approve this legislation without staff's modifications as was originally written by the supervisor. On that motion, Commissioner Fong?
No.
Commissioner Johnson?
No.
Commissioner Koppel?
No.
Commissioner Moore?
Aye.
Commissioner Richards?
Aye.
Commissioner Melgar?
Aye.
And Commission President Hillis?
No.
Commissioners, that fails 3-4 with Commissioners Fong, Johnson, Koppel, and Hillis voting against. Is there an alternate motion? If there's no alternate motion, this
I mean, I
motion...
can't make a motion, but I'd support it with staff's recommendation.
Second?
No, he
I can't
cannot
make
make
it.
a motion.
Good, make it.
You can
Would you like to
that-
make
you
a
can make that
motion?
motion?
Make a motion to approve with staff recommendation
And also the north side of Broadway.
and the north side of Broadway.
Second.
Very good, Commissioners, on that motion to approve this legislation with staff's modifications as well as broadening the north side of Broadway. Commissioner Fong?
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Koppel?
Aye.
Commissioner Moore?
No.
Commissioner Richards?
No.
Commissioner Melgar?
No.
And Commission President Hillis?
Aye.
So moved, Commissioners. That motion passes 4-3 with Commissioners Moore, Richards, and Melgar voting against. Commissioners, that concludes all the items on your agenda today.
All right, thank you. We're
The
adjourned.
motion, you guys have 4 votes, why don't you make it?
We were making you wait for it.
I said 5 o'clock, it's